Last month, the New Hanover County School Board got a presentation from historian Rebecca Taylor about a potential addition to the history curriculum, the story of the Freeman family and their land in the southern part of the county, including Seabreeze, which has long been a safe haven for people of color. Descendants of the Freeman family were happy to hear their story would be taught, but they hope it's done the right way. The story mainly starts in the mid-19th century with Alexander and Charity Freeman, who were free people of color. They left their son, Robert Bruce, 108 acres of land. Bruce then amassed nearly 3,000 acres, which he passed on to his 11 children. But what happened to the Freeman's land after Bruce's death is complicated. Some of it was lost in the heir process. Large portions were taken by eminent domain, and recently the town of Carolina Beach bought some of the remaining portions of land at Freeman Park and has officially designated it a public space. A historical marker was also put up to commemorate the Freemans and their accomplishments in May, and descendants Christopher Eaton and Dorian Cromartie are proud of getting that done. Christopher Eaton is a Freeman descendant, and his grandfather is civil rights icon Dr. Hubert Eaton. Dorian Cromartie, who ran for the New Hanover County School Board in 2022, is the grandson of Rachel Freeman. She was a member of the school board and an advocate for education. One of the elementary schools is named after her. Christopher and Dorian, thanks for being here. Let's start with the story of Alexander and Charity Freeman. Who were they, Christopher?
Alexander and Charity Freeman were the parents of Robert Bruce Freeman Sr., and they did migrate from Bladen, Columbus County area to the lower Black River district of New Hanover County, and I believe the earliest census records of that was in 1840. And then from 1840 to 1850, they moved even further south from the lower Black River district to Federal Point. In the 1850 census, Alexander and Charity were listed as free persons of color in the Federal Point Township, along with Robert Bruce Freeman and another brother, Frank.
And what was the designation next to them? Was it for their ethnicity?
Mulatto.
Okay, that's how they were described. Mm-hmm. Did they identify as Native Americans or Black, or do we know that?
The best guess that I could come up with, they identified as Native American, because that's what Alexander and Charity were. What
did they do, and then how did they start amassing this land?
Alexander was listed as a fisherman. In 1855, Alexander purchased 108 acres on Myrtle Grove Sound from Thomas Joyner, and that is the original Freeman tract, which was actually, I don't want to guess the mileage, but it's further up the road from what we know now as Seabreeze, kind of like where Myrtle Grove Road is.
And so he earned enough as a fisherman to buy that land at the time?
Yes. And I'm assuming he had help from others.
In his family?
In his family, or he seemed to have made friends with some of the right people. I'm not sure what he did for those people, but he could not read or write.
And how do we know that?
By the wordage of his will, and when it went to probate, it states, I believe, a gentleman named William Reston, who was an attorney. He was the one who drafted Alexander's will. He left everything to his son, Robert Bruce Freeman Sr.
Okay, because he was the oldest.
Yes, he was the eldest. And it was 108 acres. I've tried to do my research about Charity. There's not a lot of information on Charity. I do know that Robert Bruce Freeman Sr. had at least one sister, older sister, that I know for a fact lived here in New Hanover County in downtown Wilmington. Her name was Jane B. Green.
And what did Robert Bruce do?
Robert Bruce was a laborer, fisherman, kind of a jack of all trades, really.
And that is how he was able to continue to buy land, because, again, he was working and just buying up land when he could.
Yes.
And at the time of his death, how much land did he have?
At the time of his death in 1901, he owned little under 3,000 acres.
just throughout his life, purchasing year by year?
No. He owned the original 108 acres that his father Alexander left him at the time of his death. In 1870, he purchased 320-acre tract known as the Fergus Tract. That tract was connected to Kaintuck Landing and Lord's Creek, so kind of in the general vicinity of the original 108-acre tract.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only tract that I have not been able to find accurate metes and bounds descriptions, but I believe I know exactly where it is. In 1876, he purchased 2,500 acres of land for $1 an acre.
He did leave his 11 children a large mass of land, and we'll talk about that, how that was divided up and how complicated that was. But
yeah. I think it's interesting that he was able to accomplish what he accomplished also without the ability to read and write.
Robert Bruce?
Yes.
And we know that were other professionals drafting his documents and things like that as well?
Yes. His signature is not consistent, and it always says his mark, so from what I was told, that's typical of somebody drafting it in his name, and possibly one of his sons drafted his will for him. And I do know it's kind of ironic, but are you familiar with Captain John Harper?
No.
Okay. He's one of the instrumental players in the development of the town of Carolina Beach and the New Hanover County Transit Company. He was the steamer captain that used to dock down here at Market Street and transport visitors of all color down to Carolina Beach on the river. And that's where they built the transit car system on the Cape Fear Riverside. And they would disembark from the steamer and get on a train or a trolley and go to Carolina Beach after it was developed. Everybody had interest in it, so they could not get rid of it without having everybody's say-so.
Heirs property.
Yeah, heir property. And he didn't assign any of those tracts of land to any certain person because, honestly, at that time, he didn't think that they were valuable pieces of land that could be cultivated and cropped and fished. And
that's Freeman Park, too.
Yes.
But then if the family wanted to do something with that, they would have to come to consensus.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Dorian, do you want to weigh in here?
That's the problem with heir property. If I have land and I have children and I die and they have to come to an agreement that they all want to sell the property or keep the property or divide the property. And if it doesn't happen, then that's when the government comes in.
And I'm glad you kind of pointed that out because it's kind of something I've been dancing around. A large portion of the Freeman land holdings outside of the 400-acre homestead tract was seized by eminent domain. That includes Carolina Beach State Park, the 200-acre Lorraine Coast Guard Station.
On River Road.
All of that fell into the Sunny Point Military Blast Terminal. And so there was a big lawsuit, just like Snow's Cut. All of that was seized by eminent domain. The family was compensated, but not justly compensated.
When did that happen? I guess at different times.
Yeah, over a course of 30, 40 years. Well, Snow's Cut, Being Dredged, Coast Guard, Lorraine Station, and the Sunny Point Military Buffer Zone, and now Freeman Park.
What's your understanding of the negotiations when that happened, that Carolina Beach now owns most of Freeman Park?
Honestly, I was not involved with those negotiations. I was aware of what was going on, but since, I guess, my direct descendants, Freeman descendants, sold their interest in Freeman Park to Dr. Burnett in 1938, but I did speak with the attorneys, and essentially what I was told was the state and the county didn't want to take it via eminent domain, but if the LLCs and whoever was in charge of the LLCs not come to terms, then they were going to have to impose eminent domain. And I don't know exactly what the outcome of that was, but I know that there are still some family members that are due just compensation that have yet to receive it.
With the most recent negotiation.
This should have happened before there was any negotiation or sale finalized.
For Freeman.
For Freeman Park, yes. And, of course, the original plat maps for when they're dredging the Intracoastal Waterway of where it began and how much acreage Freeman family owned and how much they cut out, and just through Snow's Cut, and then going northeastwardly up towards Masonboro Island through Myrtle Grove. It's quite a lot, which actually shrank the 300 acres to, I believe, 270, and then it also shrank again, and I think it's 170.
And I will say that's just one part of it. You know, there are other stories of how other family members lost their land.
And that's how they view it. They lost their land. Being forced to.
Being tricked to sign paperwork, things like that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In these instances we're talking about, or other ones too?
In this, I don't know if it's in this time period. I mean,
It's around the same.
yeah.
A little before, a little after. They were led to believe one thing, and I guess just...
The paperwork said something else.
Yeah.
In the 50s.
More the 1920s and early 1900s, after Robert Bruce passed, and even before Robert Bruce passed. I see some things that just don't add up.
All power to the people. I said the P is for power, the A for action, the NT because now is the time to get it done. See, the H is for heart and the E for effect. The R hold it down at the end for respect. Who am I, a panther? Who am I, a panther? What I got soul. What I got love. What I got pride. What I wanna be free. Reach your hands in the air if you feel like me. Who am I, a panther? Who am I, a panther? What I got soul. What I got love. What I got pride. What I wanna be free. Raise your hands in the air if you feel like me. Can you see the pride in the panther as he glows in splendor and grace, toppling obstacle face in the way of the progression of his race? Can you see the pride in the panther as she nurtures her young all alone? The seed must grow regardless.
Katherine Massey Book Club, context of white supremacy. Worthless Negro from Virginia, Gus T. Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, information for non-white people, victims of racism. This broadcast certainly not intended for individuals classified as white. Today's date, Friday, October 24, 2025. So I have been told. This is our third installment on Evelyn Williams Inadmissible Evidence, the story of the African American trial lawyer who defended the Black Liberation Army. We're picking up on chapter 7. We will get very heavy into Assata Shakur. She will no longer be Joey, and the Black Liberation Army and the need for that whole system of racism. That's what we'll begin to get into this week, and that'll start to dominate the remainder of the book. The audio that we heard this week, referencing what we heard last week about Freeman Beach in North Carolina, that segment from WHQR, Wilmington Public Radio, and that was from 2024, so barely a year ago. They spoke with Freeman family descendants Christopher Eaton and Dorian Cromartie. I believe they are both victims of white supremacy, and you heard them giving extensive history of racism in Hanover County, North Carolina, exactly same county, same region, same beach that we heard about last week from Miss Williams, where she talked about her parents and their fight to keep that property, beachfront Wilmington property, in the 20th century, and all of the lies and racism and how this has gone on for so long in stealing black people's land. And importantly, we heard Mr. Eaton, Mr. Cromartie, they said that you had a lot of these black people, they couldn't read. They were talking about Robert Bruce, where he amassed 3,000 acres, and then race soldiers in North Carolina just went about the business. We're going to steal all of this property. but they said that he couldn't read and write, and they talked about how he would leave a mark, and they had all these different signatures. I mean, you can imagine, and they talked about that extensively, because it wasn't just he, it was many black people throughout North Carolina and throughout the known universe. Race soldiers don't allow us to read, don't allow us access to books and libraries. Man, you want to talk about tricking somebody out of land. And they said on top of that, they said, hey, in addition, you can't write, so you can't even sign your own name. They said sometimes they give you a piece of paper. Look here, Bruce, sign your name down here, and we'll give you 300 acres, and it's just certify you own the property, and blah 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 blah. And then you find out it says something totally different. You didn't, say, I'm gonna sell you all 3,000 acres of my land for a quarter, or something retarded like that, or something racist like that. And again, it's so much easier to do something like that, one, when you are in a position of total terrorism. Nigger, you gonna defy me? And or you can't even read. I don't even have a chance to look at this here document. And now, what does this say? What am I agreeing to? I can't even sign my name. Anyway, they went into extensive detail in talking about the other machinations in terms of white people stealing property, eminent domain. Got brought up a bunch. Might as well have said manifest destiny. God said that we could have this property for, a parking lot, roller coaster, condominiums, park, whatever. Anything but you niggers being here. The terrorizing black people, even profiting from black people for their leisure, but then we want this property for whatever we want to put, as I said, beachfront property here and all these goodies that don't have nothing to do with niggers, and we can conspire and go through all types of means. Importantly, they also talked about heirs, meaning Mr. Bruce is not going to live forever, I don't think, neither will I. So I put out my will, and you have a bunch of children, you leave a little bit to everybody. We talked about, or Miss Williams, she wrote about that last week. And I said, all it takes is find the weakest link. Who is the person who needs a little bit of money? Who is the person who is illiterate? Who is the person who has the worst credit? And you can go and twist and lean on them, be aggressive. Lots of different means where you can go and get that property. They put markers up. We talked about that last week. They put markers up to recognize the long history of racism and black land ownership and theft in this area. But again, climate change, they've been talking about beach coastal erosion, sea level rise, all of the, and increased hurricanes, all of that in this area now. So I think I read that last week where they said, hey, come 2100 to 100, this area might not be underwater, but it might not be habitable for whites or non-whites. Hopefully we'll have the system of white supremacy replaced by then. All that said, we will get to it. We're picking up on chapter 7. As I said, I think we're going to get right and direct. COINTELPRO, Black Liberation Army, no longer Joey, Assata. I think all that is coming right now. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, audio segment 1.
Chapter 7. In 1968, I had sent my resume to New York University's Urban Affairs and Poverty Law program, which had advertised its need for supervising attorneys. After several interviews by the search committee, headed by Leroy Clark, a black full-time professor and the chairman of the program, I was hired along with 2 others to supervise one of 3 teams of 15 lawyers each. The teams would be assigned as house counsel for various community organizations that had requested legal assistance but had no funds to provide their own. The goals of the program as outlined to me were impressive. The university was attempting to fulfill its responsibility as an urban center of knowledge by sharing its expertise with needy communities through young lawyers who had volunteered under the auspices of Volunteers in Service to America Vista in exchange for credit toward a graduate degree. A list of organizations, each with specific legal needs, had been provided from which the Vista volunteers chose their assignments, ranging from forming not-for-profit corporations to bringing class action suits. I noticed that, with few exceptions, the organizations, many of which were familiar to me, were located in black areas of the city. The job seemed to be a logical extension of my abstract experience at Hare U. The work promised to be challenging, and the salary was good. But my eager anticipation came to an abrupt halt on the first day of orientation when I met the VISTA volunteers. They were all white. No one had prepared me for that. They were not only white, they were rich. Long-haired and casually dressed, they joked throughout the 2-week orientation. I wondered if they could coexist with the problems of the poor and disenfranchised. Was it even possible? I was determined to understand the reasons that were sufficiently compelling to force the reluctant powerful to aid the powerless. And I did. Prior to that time, I had had no direct experience with prestigious law schools or with their university's undergraduate 65 divisions, for that matter. But within a few months, I had put all of the pieces of NYU's program and its participants into place. And the prototype was alarming. Academia rapidly descends from its lofty perch of intellectual and exclusionary purity when offered large sums of money, called bribes, by ordinary people. And New York University Law School was no exception. By 1968, the government and all those who had a stake in maintaining the political status quo came together to prevent a repetition of the urban riots that had occurred across the country in the mid-60s. Conditions seemed to be as ripe for major urban violence in 1968 as they had been in 1967, when the Kerner Commission, appointed by President Johnson on July 27th of that year to study the causes of the 2-week Newark and Detroit riots during the summer of 1967, concluded that our nation is moving toward 2 societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal, and warned that next time white America would not escape. Footnote: the study, conducted by the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, is commonly called the Kerner Commission Report because its chairman was Otto Kerner, then governor of Illinois. The report was funded by the Ford Foundation, and the composition of the commission was so conservative that Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.B., was rejected as a member because he was not considered a bona fide moderate. End footnote. In response, the government and academia were creating innovative, preventive programs with significant amounts of money made available for this purpose. Despite the Commission's findings that societal inequalities were essentially responsible for the 1967 riots, it nevertheless reached the conclusion, quite unexplainable and unsupported by any data, that the riots were caused by militant organizations, local and national, and individual agitators who repeatedly forecast and called for violence in the spring and summer of 1967. The Commission further called for increased surveillance and intervention in the affairs of organizations and individuals considered by this august body to be militant. That recommendation justified intensification of the atrocities later committed by the FBI's counterintelligence program COINTELPRO, initiated in August 1967 to penetrate and destroy black organizations. The Commission further intoned, in the summer of 1967, we have seen in our cities a chain reaction of racial violence. If we are heedless, none of us shall escape the consequences. It urged investigations of organized activity to be continued at all levels of government, including committees of Congress. These investigations relate not only to the disorders of 1967, but also to the actions of groups and individuals, particularly in schools and colleges during this last fall and winter. The Commission has cooperated in these investigations. They should continue. It is significant that these words mirrored the stated COINTELPRO goals. As a result, federal and private funds were quickly made available to every institutional mainstay, including universities, to quell the possibility of another long, hot summer. And in 1968, an additional ingredient fostering potential societal eruption was factored into the already explosive equation: resistance to the Vietnam War. Using federal funds siphoned from those allocated to Vista, New York University Law School had put its shoulder to the wheel and established the Urban Affairs and Poverty Law program, which was designed to absorb and deflect militant opposition to the Vietnam War by offering young lawyers automatic exemption from the draft, which by then had peaked to over 475,000 and was increasing every day. The motivation of the Vista volunteers for personal survival was shared equally by the poor and the black, but survival was afforded only to the rich and the white, for whom the country had established legitimate escape routes. To further extend the policy of containment, major private contributors guaranteed increased law school enrollment of black students at NYU by establishing funds to be used expressly for their tuition and other expenses. Among the contributors were the Carnegie Foundation, responsible for the funding of the 1944 study of race relations in the United States called An American Dilemma, The Negro Problem in the United States, authored by Gunnar Myrdal, which contributed a number 100,000 scholarship grant for each of the 3 years beginning in 1968. The Samuel Rubin Foundation, which donated $25,000 a year for 10 years, terminating in 1974. And the Strook Scholarship, which guaranteed $5,000 a year for 5 years from 1968 to 1972. In addition, between 1967 and 1969, New York University Law School alumni donated $10,000. A credible facade of racial inclusion was constructed by appointing Leroy Clark, the only full-time black professor at the law school, albeit untenured, to chair the Urban Affairs program. The school protected itself against possible charges of either racial or sex discrimination by hiring me. And so the package was complete. But as in so many instances when political architects construct their careful plans to contain specific activities, the designer's intentions are not always followed. Within several months, the program exceeded the parameters set by the administration, and it was forced to give reluctant permission to the Vista volunteers' involvement with undesirable organizations like Fight Back, which used a grassroots approach to end job discrimination, and community groups such as the parents of Ocean Hill-Brownsville, who were demanding community control of their schools. Vista volunteers assigned to my team worked with both groups. We spent many weekends locked inside an Ocean Hill-Brownsville school with parents and other community members, writing their positions on legal pads, fashioning them into memoranda and briefs, rushing to get them typed, serving them on the Board of Education, and filing them in court. When the motions were argued, the community petitioners were there asserting their ultimatums. We were a part of the settlements forged, and we shared in the few victories hammered out. I must say that some of the Vista volunteers met the challenge they faced in worthy fashion. Despite their frank admission that when the Vietnam War was over they would cut their hair and exchange their jeans for Wall Street attire, the experience permanently altered the career directions of many. One in particular, Andrew Loeb, the nephew of the founder of and major contributor to the Loeb Student Center at New York University, joined a California legal services agency representing migrant farm workers when the program ended. When the Vista program was terminated in 1969, Robert McKay, the dean of the law school, appointed me his assistant as minority student advisor and gave me the opportunity to design and teach a clinical course in juvenile delinquency for third-year and graduate law students. Bob was careful to impress on me the exact nature of my appointment. I was the assistant to the dean, not the assistant dean, an immeasurable difference. But the essential significance to me of my position was that I was advisor to the minority students, with no need to pretend that my concern included all students. One of my assignments was service on the law school's admissions committee. Although I reviewed white applications also, my main role was to recommend acceptance of minority students. A gigantic problem arose, however, when I differed with Daniel Kimball, who was in charge of the admission standards, over the meaning of minority applicants. He wanted to include all white foreigners in that category, thereby diluting representation by blacks in the 30 spots designated by the Carnegie Foundation for disadvantaged minorities who, because of racism, had been denied equal education in the United States. I was specifically opposed to the inclusion of self-exiled Cuban students who, under the Batista regime, had enjoyed every advantage their society had to offer and continued to benefit from U.S. largesse after they arrived here. But because of low LSAT scores and grade point averages, they competed unfavorably with the 5,000 white students applying for the 350 slots in the freshman class. I argued against Kimball's concept of minority ad nauseum, bringing my complaints to the full admissions committee. I pointed out that if his interpretation prevailed, the 2/5 of the population who earned 65% of the national income, also a minority, would be entitled to Carnegie scholarships. Kimball's position was so transparently specious it would have been ludicrous and dismissed without comment had he not been so insistent. Our fights were endless. But I persisted, and no Cubans became law students through the Carnegie program while I was at NYU. Only the Black Allied Law Students Association, BALSA, and the relaxed environment of Greenwich Village surrounding NYU relieved the social and emotional isolation of the minority students, most of whom were black. The express reason given by the white students for their pervasive hostility was their perception that the minority students had been accepted into the law school only because their tuition was guaranteed by the Carnegie Foundation grant, thereby depriving whites of 30 spaces in the entering classes for the years 1969 through 1971. While, admittedly, applications for admission had climbed to more than 5,000 a year, competition was fierce in law schools across the country, and LSAT minority scores were not as high as those of white students admitted. The whites ignored 69, the special advantages given them through the Root-Tilden scholarships, a $2 million working capital fund which provided full tuition and other expenses as well as an additional $1,500 yearly stipend. And those scholarships were not based on need. They also overlooked the fact that few, if any, graduates fulfilled their promise to enter public service in exchange for the scholarships, and the fact that the LSAT scores for the Root-Tilden recipients were far below those of the average white student admitted, and that throughout its history only 2 Root-Tilden recipients had been black. It didn't matter to the white students, resentful of the 10% minority set aside for entering classes, that only 1% of lawyers in the United States were African Americans, or that this minuscule number, excluded from bar associations and corporate law practice, was hardly a threat to their privileged positions, economically or otherwise. They still insisted that the standards used for the affirmative action Root-Tilden scholarships given to undeserving white students were unconscionable, unfair, and downright reverse discrimination when applied to deserving black students. The BALSA members ventilated their bitter feelings to me during our evening meetings, but while I could try to ease some situations, I could provide no real permanent window in the brick wall they faced daily. And there were other battles. At the end of the first year, the Credentials Committee recommended that many black students be dropped because their grades fell below a set minimum. In this situation, Bob McKay came to my aid, using his influence to retain every minority student in academic trouble. I prepared a statistical analysis demonstrating the wide differences between the financial resources of minority and white families, and supporting my contention that almost no white students worked because their loans were supplemented by their families, and that 90% of minority students worked because their families had no resources with which to help them, despite the school's prohibition of any employment during the first year. I argued that the school had an obligation to provide remediation for students it had admitted with lower LSAT scores and GPA, and that it could not accept Carnegie Foundation money designed for just such students, and then allow them to fail after 1 year of difficulties compounded by employment and exclusion from campus life. As a result, no black student during my years at NYU flunked out. Of the several who were permitted to continue with lower grades beyond the first year, one is a New York State Supreme Court judge. I don't know what most of the others are doing now, but I am especially proud of John Walker, who moved to the state of Mississippi to practice law on behalf of blacks dispossessed of their human rights, and of Henrietta Turnquist, who bravely began her own private practice in Atlanta, Georgia. I was expected to attend faculty meetings, at which I dutifully appeared whenever I could find no satisfactory excuse for my absence, but I soon lost interest in the faculty's clever articulations and lofty posturings, which barely concealed their hidden agendas and infightings. They considered me too unimportant to be looked at directly, and even if I was sitting between two faculty members who were being addressed by another across the room, the speaker would look from one to the other without his eyes ever crossing my face. An amazing feat. I usually spent the time scratching out tic-tac-toe games with an imaginary opponent. Only when matters of importance to minority students arose did I lift my voice and demand eye-to-eye confrontation. Apart from Bob and Leroy, only Norman Dorson, director of the Hayes Civil Liberties Program at the university, talked to me. My involvement with the black undergraduate students at the university was unexpected, because they considered Roscoe Brown, the head of the Black Studies Department, a part of the system. Unwilling to jeopardize his own ambitions to support their positions, they asked me to be their unofficial faculty representative. I met with them regularly at the Martin Luther King JRB Center on campus and gave whatever advice I could. After 46 of them occupied the chancellor's office in the law school for 22 hours in 1970, demanding an increase in the Martin Luther King scholarships, a federally funded program to absorb increased dormitory and tuition costs, I represented them when they were arrested for trespass, to the dismay of Bob McKay and the disgust of Leroy Clark. On October 25, 1971, after almost a year of preliminary hearings and trials, criminal complaints against 24 were dismissed outright, and those against the remaining 22 were dismissed on condition that they create no disturbances for a period of 3 months. My primary responsibility was the clinical course I conducted in juvenile delinquency. It was an elective open only to third-year or graduate students and required a great deal of preparation. In addition to the weekly seminar, the class was divided into 2 sections, one assigned to the Legal Aid Law Guardian Unit in family court to defend accused juveniles, the other to the Corporation Counsel's office to represent those who made the complaints against the juveniles. I prepared the students for the court appearances, for which special permission had been obtained from the Appellate Division of the Supreme Court, helped them investigate the charges and research legal questions, and frequently appeared in court with them. Although they were supervised day to day by the agencies to which they had been assigned. Each course continued over 2 semesters, and students made 4 visits each semester to institutions for delinquent children, as close to the university as Spofford in the Bronx and as far away as Warwick in Upper New York State. The course was innovative, one of the few clinical opportunities provided in any law school in the country. During the years 1971 and 1972, Bob chaired the New York State Special Commission on the Attica Prison Uprising of September 13, 1971, the bloodiest prison revolt in the history of the country. New York State Police, on direct orders from Governor Nelson Rockefeller, had killed 32 inmates and 10 hostages in an assault on the prison. McKay chose the panel and named Haywood Burns, later the head of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, as a member. The McKay Commission report criticized Rockefeller for not personally going to the prison when requested to do so by the inmates before ordering the armed assault, as well as state prison officials for not having non-lethal weapons. Since 1970, when I became the dean's assistant, I had met with McKay frequently to discuss law school matters relating to the minority students. He discussed a little of the commission's activities and progress, but he never referred to the nationwide search for Joey, although certainly the FBI and the police had talked to him about her and our family relationship. The FBI had been to my apartment on at least 4 occasions when I was at work, and agents James Murby, Al Jenkiner, Pete Malley, and John Jimerson had slipped notes under the door asking that I contact them, which I refused to do. In 1972, 3 agents stopped me in the hallway leading to my apartment and demanded that I talk to them. The conversation terminated quickly. I told them that I was Joey's lawyer and that I had no comment to make. Since then, they had not communicated with me directly, but telephone surveillance continued without interruption, and the surveillance of my person never ceased. I don't know if all my nonstop activity was merely type of mania or whether it was an intentional device to crowd out my fear for Joey's life and to keep dampen the flames of anguish that frequently interrupted my thoughts. I never went to sleep. I simply fell asleep as I rested my head on the table for a minute while writing or changing from an uncomfortable reading position. But at night, the radio was always tuned to the news station. Throughout these years, I wrestled with my own feelings about the BLA, its reported crimes, and its reported justifications. My extensive study of the European slave trade of Africans throughout the world and of African American history, as well as my own 50 years of living within the racist context of America, had made it impossible for me to reject the BLA's philosophy out of hand. When I read the accounts of the shipments of necklocked and ankle-ironed Africans delivered to slave blocks in the Americas, where they were auctioned off to the highest bidder, I was there. I made the journey for unshackled liberation along with them when the armed resistance to our slave revolts terminated in our deaths. I mourned the lives we lost fighting in the Revolutionary War only to learn that the freedom that was promised in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution was not ours. I supported our abolitionists who printed newspapers and circulated pamphlets and led organizations that peacefully demanded the end of slavery, Jim Crow laws, and the Fugitive Slave Act, and peacefully penetrated into life-threatening territory again and again to rescue our people from bondage. We insisted on joining the Union Army in a war we were told was a war for our freedom, only to learn that the Emancipation Proclamation did not guarantee our freedom and that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States was required to end the constitutional protection of slavery. The proclamation was promptly nullified by the sneering black codes of the southern states and was never fully implemented even after 2 additional constitutional amendments had been enacted. I watched helplessly as Ku Klux Klan night riders crisscrossed the country burning our black bodies on their white crosses. I suffered as the murders continued into the 1950s and 1,960 seconds, cutting down the young civil rights workers who had joined Dr. Martin Luther King's marches through the South as they fought for desegregation and voting rights, remaining steadfastly nonviolent and non-retaliatory despite the vitriolic attacks on them. And as the KKK punctuated its contempt for their passivity by assassinating white civil rights workers who had joined the movement for freedom. And I agonized as more civil rights legislation was passed, checked and checkmated. In 1963, as I walked with King through the streets of Washington, D.C., I listened to him urge his dream of equality upon white America and realized that his words did not change the poverty-ridden and unequal lives of African Americans or prevent the bomb murder of 4 black children as they prayed in a Birmingham, Alabama, church 1 month later. I heard Malcolm X's forceful analysis cry out against King's nonviolent strategy. Then bulldogs and fire hoses were turned loose on thousands of black people as they marched from Selma to Montgomery to register to vote singing, "We shall overcome." I despaired with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee when political activities could not redesign the political process so that black voters could legitimately compete for participatory roles in political parties once the poll tax, literacy tests, and other legalized impediments to free elections had been declared unconstitutional. I understood when a new generation of African Americans grew impatient with years of theoretical progress, heralded when change occurred and discredited when no change resulted. I was not surprised when the Black Panther Party rejected King's dream that guilt-ridden white Americans would share the benefits they had realized from institutional racism, and when the party urged California blacks to arm themselves for self-defense against continued police assault. I thought about the racism that had eroded the socialization process for African Americans, a process that is essential for all humans because it provides the structure within which all behavior is fashioned. When the social order provides rewards for compliance with its rules, compliance is voluntary. When the equation is fair, hard work and the achievement of educational or vocational goals will translate into jobs that will enable physical survival for the individual and the family. When a person is excluded from the equation, there is no need to comply with the rules, and the struggle for a different social order will emerge by necessity. In 1973, I thought about the 1,000 African Americans who had been killed by police on the streets of America in the previous 2 years and the 20 policemen who had lost their lives allegedly from the guns of the Black Liberation Army. And I thought the equation did not balance. It was top-heavy with black people, weighted down with bullet fragments and twisted nooses. The equation will never be balanced even after all the murders stop. Even then, history will report the one-sided picture of lynched black bodies swinging from poplar trees in silent testimony. And I thought, whether accepted or rejected, whether approved or disapproved, as long as all of the conditions that prevent inclusion continue, the possibility exists that another and another and another Black Liberation Army will emerge, prepared to kill and to die. These were my thoughts when I heard the news flash at about 1:30 in the morning of May 2, 1973. There had been a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike involving 2 state troopers and 3 people traveling south in a white Pontiac. 1 passenger and 1 state trooper were dead. 1 had escaped and a woman was seriously wounded and captured. No names were given, but I knew it was Joey. Part 2. Chapter 8. I quickly learned how to cross the distances separating Middlesex General Hospital from Middlesex Superior Court, from the New Jersey State Police Headquarters, from Roosevelt Hospital in Edison, New Jersey, from the Middlesex County Workhouse in East Brunswick. But that Wednesday morning, May 2nd, 1973, I didn't even know where Exit 9, the scene of the shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike, was. All I knew was that if I went south on the turnpike, I would reach New Brunswick, where Middlesex Hospital was located and where Joey lay in critical condition. The information that Assata Shakur was dead and Joanne Chesimard was wounded and captured was not released until late that morning, after a rushed fingerprint check had identified them. An unknown third person had escaped, and my night fear had been confirmed by the time the first streaks of sun illuminated the sky. I called my sister as I dressed. She had heard the news but was too shaken to drive. I couldn't wait. I didn't own a car and I didn't drive, so I hired a cab for the day. The next day's papers placed a story on the front page, complete with pictures of the smashed and bullet-riddled white Pontiac in which Joey had been a passenger, the state trooper cars involved, the by now familiar mugshot, and a surprising amount of information concerning the circumstances of the shootout. The New York Times reported a state trooper and a former information minister for a New York faction of the Black Panthers were killed, and the woman leader of the so-called Black Liberation Army was wounded and captured today in a shootout and chase on the New Jersey Turnpike. She apparently was being taken by 2 male companions to a new hideout in Philadelphia when their car was stopped at about 12:45 a.m. for a routine traffic check and the shooting erupted. Miss Chesimard was reported in serious condition at Middlesex General Hospital today with gunshot wounds in both arms and in a shoulder. The Panther who was fatally wounded was identified as James F. Gostin, 32. He also used the Islamic name Zaid Malik Shakur and was the information minister for the Black Panthers under Eldridge Cleaver. The state police superintendent, Colonel David B. Kelly, said the incident began when Trooper James Harper observed a 1965 Pontiac Lemons with Vermont license plates exceeding the speed limit slightly as it headed south on the turnpike. The trooper ordered the driver to pull over about 200 yards south of the Turnpike Administration Building at Exit 9, near New Brunswick. In accordance with state police procedure, the trooper called for a backup man and Trooper Werner Forster arrived. Trooper Harper asked the driver for his registration and, when he noticed a discrepancy, asked the man to get out of the car. The driver went to the rear of his car, where Trooper Forster began to question him. At this point, 1 or more of the suspects began shooting with automatic handguns, according to Colonel Kelly. Trooper Forster fired 4 times before he fell mortally wounded in the head, according to police. The driver of the suspect's car jumped into the vehicle and sped off as 3 patrol cars took up the chase and toll booths down the line were alerted. The Times also had a 3-column feature story entitled "Sees Woman Called Black Militant Soul," repeating the many allegations reported in Daily's Target Blue New York Magazine article. The Daily News captioned its feature to militants, "She's a STT." Joanne, its story began, "To the cops she was wanted in Queens and the Bronx for bank robbery and wanted for questioning in the slaying of police officers Rocco Laurie and Gregory Foster in Manhattan." But to her supporters and sympathizers, she was a Black Joan of Arc. Such is the legend of Joanne Deborah Chesimard, the asserted high priestess of the cop-hating Black Liberation Army. Word came to police investigators of the strange young woman accused of leading assorted Army members on cop attacks, bank robberies, and other crimes. In a 15-month period, her criminal reputation exceeded such heralded female felons as Bonnie Parker and Ma Barker. She became the most wanted woman in New York City history. Veteran cops, incensed by the murders and attacks on fellow officers, said privately that they would shoot her down on sight if given the opportunity. Highlighting the article was the well-publicized Queens bank robbery surveillance photo, under which the caption read, "Joanne Chesimard allegedly taking part in a Queens bank robbery in August 1971. The papers gave no clue to Joey's real condition, and I could barely contain my growing apprehension. Turnpike traffic was backed up for miles as we approached exit 9, and when we finally made the slow, curved turnoff down the exit ramp to head toward New Brunswick, I could see the turnpike as it continued south past the State Police Administration building on the hill. Directly below the building on the highway were the state troopers' marked cars that were involved in the shootout, differentiated from the many other marked cars by their red and white rooftop lights, which continued to revolve. Although I would visit this scene many times in the future, that first inspection revealed the full terror of the night. Broken glass was everywhere as the crime scene personnel gathered evidence and reporters and television crews took photographs. Some state troopers surrounded the site while others scurried from the road to the top of the hill and into the building. Over the next few days, New Jersey officials erected an impenetrable barrier that effectively prevented me from seeing Joey. On the first day, the hospital staff said that her condition was too critical to permit visitors, no matter who they were. And even if her condition was not serious, I would need to get permission from the sheriff, Joseph DeMarino. His office was located in the Middlesex County Jail, but he was out. A deputy told me that, in any event, the state troopers would have to approve the visit. I went to the State Police Administration building, passing a security check before being permitted into the parking lot behind it, and was told that the person I needed to see was occupied. I was told to return tomorrow, or some other time. The fact that I was Joey's lawyer meant nothing. Neither did the fact that I was a relative, of which proof would be needed. A promise was made, however, that consideration would be given the next day. This endless charade lasted all day. I tried to learn whether Joey had survived from the radio broadcast in the cab in the afternoon newspapers, but the information simply repeated the reports of the shootout and the search for the escaped driver. Telephone calls to the hospital were fruitless. The staff there would give no information. I left New Jersey and went directly to my sister's house to give her a full report. She drove me to New Jersey the next day, and our first stop was at the hospital, where we were told that Joey's condition was too critical for us to see her. I later learned that that day she had been arraigned in her hospital room on the felony complaint related to the Turnpike incident and had not been considered too critical to listen to 6 pages of charges. We made the rounds of officialdom, and at trooper headquarters we were told to return in the afternoon when permission would be given to see Joey. When we did come back, we were told to wait because the person in charge had not yet arrived. At this point, I knew that further efforts along this line would be meaningless, and I went directly to the Middlesex Superior Court, where I saw the administrative judge and obtained an oral order for Joey's mother, her sister, and me to see her the following day. Our only solace was that at least there had been no report of her death. The several days of unconcealed hatred shown by the state troopers had not prepared me for their army force at the hospital. Joey's room was located at the end of a long corridor, which was lined on each side with uniformed troopers, hats tilted forward over their eyes, in full riot gear, with shotguns pointed at me, their fingers poised on the triggers. I counted 10 of them, 5 on each side, spaced apart for total control of my single body proceeding between them. There comes a time when ancillary emotional reactions stop, when the body ceases to function on any level except the single one required to cope with the particular danger it faces. As I walked between the troopers, all my systems shut down except for the automatic mechanism I needed to walk as firmly and as arrogantly as my tall structure permitted. I had entered the quiet world of primal survival, and I had only one object: to see my child. And all of those triggered fingers would have had to move to prevent me from doing that. Before I reached Joey's room, a light brown-skinned female sheriff, who I later learned was Mildred Scott, approached and quickly guided me through a small door into a bathroom and told me to take off all my clothes, including my underwear. Under 81 standing that resistance would prevent a visit with Joey, I removed each garment carefully in slow motion compliance until I stood naked before her, turned around for posterior inspection, and was directed to put my clothes back on. Accompanied by the sheriff, I walked between the last two troopers and into Joey's room for the allotted 10-minute visit. I paid the same price for the next 4 days until I was able to obtain a court order prohibiting the state's humiliating treatment of me. At that first visit, I walked around the 5 armed troopers encircling the bed to which both her ankles were shackled, and I saw Joey for the first time in more than 2 years. Her face was bruised and swollen. Her right arm was in a sling, and blood oozed from the bullet wound in her bandaged chest. She was much thinner than when I had last seen her, the slender body barely imprinting an outline against the sheets. Her hair was short, only about 2 inches long, erasing from my mind the media-generated image of her large afro. Yet this person was no stranger to me. This was my Joey. I gently hugged her and we whispered together, neither of us letting the tears drop. I told her I'd been given only 10 minutes and asked her to tell me as quickly as she could what I needed to know about her physical condition. She said a judge had been there the day before with the prosecutor and a court reporter and had read the criminal charges against her. She said that she had repeatedly asked for me to be there but was told I couldn't be reached. One explained that I had been in New Jersey for the last 2 days trying to get permission to see her. She gave me the copy of the 6 pages of charges that had been read to her. She said the judge had told the court reporter to enter into the record not guilty when she refused to participate at all without my presence. We talked about her wounds and she told me that her right arm was paralyzed and that the bullet in her chest had not been removed. I told her we would try to get permission for a private doctor to examine her. But her primary concern was the removal of the state troopers from her room. She told me they were threatening to kill her. I told her that her mother and sister were there, and she smiled, tried to sit up a little, but sank back onto the bed. The troopers moved toward us, shotguns aimed. Time was up. I told her I would visit the next day and march back through the corridor. For me to obtain a court order to remove the 24-hour-a-day guard from her room, I had to be admitted pro hac vice to the courts of New Jersey permission for an out-of-state lawyer to practice in the state for one particular case. And the rules required that only a New Jersey lawyer could make the request. So each day, as soon as my 10-minute visits were over, I searched for a black attorney. But each day, the threats to Joey became more vicious, soon accompanied by shotgun butts jabbed into her body, nighttime storming around her bed, and the shouting of Nazi slogans by the German descendants who made up a large part of the state trooper force. Desperate in my helplessness, I asked the director of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, Haywood Burns, to call a press conference to expose the danger to which Joey was being subjected. The conference was held in the first floor lounge of the hospital, and a few hours later Joey was medically discharged to Roosevelt Hospital in Edison, New Jersey, where security was not as overwhelming. Several days after the shootout, Sundiata Acoli Clark Squire, the driver of the Pontiac, was captured. He wanted Charles McKinney, his lawyer in the Panther 21 trial, the only black lawyer for the defendants in that trial, to represent him. I not only knew Charlie, but fortunately he was a close friend of Raymond Brown, a brilliant black New Jersey criminal trial lawyer who agreed to sponsor our admissions to the New Jersey courts to defend Assata and Sundiata. When Ray made the formal motion on May 18th, C. Judson Hamlin, the prosecutor, opposed me, alleging that I had already violated the New Jersey canon of ethics by participating in the press conference. The administrative judge, Leon Jarofsky, reluctantly granted Ray's motion, however, on two conditions: that I abide by the New Jersey canon of ethics and that I make no further comments to the press about the case. He admonished me that if I breached either condition, I would be removed from the case. While the composition of the police changed from state troopers to Middlesex County sheriffs at Roosevelt Hospital, sheriffs remained in Joey's room, guarding her still shackled, partially paralyzed body with pointed shotguns, even during my visits. Now officially classified as attorney-client conferences, despite the fact that the presence of the police prevented us from discussing legal strategy. It required another court order to remove the police during my visits, and when the media widely reported that court decision, Joey was moved to the Middlesex County workhouse and placed in a wing with other pretrial female prisoners, separated from them by double iron doors. Our family had retained Dr. Alan Clark, a former health director for the city of Newark, who headed a team consisting of a thoracic expert and a neurosurgeon to examine Joey. And after a long delay for a credentials check, they found her health viable and recommended against removing the bullet because of its critical location next to her heart. Administering an electromyogram, they determined the extent to which physical therapy could minimize the paralysis of her right arm. This was the first time I had represented a political prisoner, which I now define as someone who has been illegally incarcerated because of his or her opinions, or who, having been convicted of a crime, is brutalized while in prison because of his or her opinions, or who is convicted of committing a crime for political reasons. I believe that all African American prisoners are political prisoners, whether or not they label themselves as such, because of the circumstances that got them into jail, as well as the harshness of sentencing applied only to them. Joey was no different, but for whatever reason she was a notorious, widely publicized political prisoner. And she had astounding support from many segments of the black community whose only knowledge about her came from a negative media. Defense committees had formed in both New York and New Jersey. College students held meetings to disseminate information about the political aspects of the case and to urge attendance at the trial. The most vocal group was the Black Student Congress at Douglas College, a division of Rutgers University in New Brunswick. The New Jersey Black Assembly, a group of elected black state representatives, had asked the New Jersey Attorney General to remove state troopers from Joey's Middlesex hospital room, declaring, Sister Shesemerd should be dealt with the same presumption of innocence, at least that the policeman Thomas Shea, who has been charged with murdering a 10-year-old youth, Clifford Glover, and is allowed to walk around free on a mere $25,000 bail. Charles Gray, assistant director of the Middlesex County Urban League, went against that conservative national organization and urged support of Joey and Sundiata. And Angela Davis, speaking at Princeton University, called for support for our freedom fighters. The Law Students Civil Rights Research Council, the Prisoners' Rights Organized Defense Project of the American Civil Liberties Union in New Jersey, and the Coalition of Concerned Black Americans, an umbrella organization of 80 community-based and professional black organizations, in addition to many white militants, were among those supporting Joey and Sundiata. But being a lawyer for a political prisoner is in no way comparable to representing the usual criminal defendant. The orientation of political prisoners is international, global rather than personal, philosophical, and critically analytical. They consider the legal situation in which they find themselves entrapped after they are arrested as simply a microcosm of the larger society's imprisonment of all of its black citizens, and extrication from it must be defined by stratagems of political correctness. While occasionally they are forced to do so, they usually will not conform to the rules of the court, to the rules of criminal or civil procedure, or to the rules of evidence, not to mention the rules of prescribed courtroom decorum. Political prisoners scrutinize each motion their attorney files with an eye not for its legal competence or consequences, but for its political ramifications in the overall, unceasing need to expose the society in its true light, not to extricate themselves from its grip. and they refused to be deterred by fear of the system's retaliatory might or by the hope that submission to its rules would benefit them. Representing Joey required constant adjustment from my long-practiced academic and technical approach. Her assessment of our differences was partially correct. According to her, I would not classify a forest as such until I had counted every tree, while she would recognize the obvious immediately. I was cerebral and legally knowledgeable, but not the political strategist that she was. So we made a pact. I would do my legal thing, and she would do her necessary thing. She never doubted the superiority of people power over legal power any more than she doubted that only the people, to whom she always referred as my people, would care enough to understand and to help her in any way they could. I watched with fascination her smiling, power-fisted greeting to the friends and supporters who filled every courtroom at every trial as if they had gathered for a social event. And sometimes, when the going was really rough, I watched with disbelief. Incensed by the hypocrisy of the approaching July 4th Independence Day, Joey decided to make a public statement to African Americans for the first time about who she was and what she believed in. She wrote the message with a shaky left hand and asked me to help her record it on a tape recorder and to release it over black radio stations. While I understood her urgency to communicate her love and her political philosophy to black people, especially to those who considered her an embarrassment, I also felt that my continued status as her lawyer had to be factored into her decision about making a public statement. I feared that Jarofsky would use the publication of Joey's tape message as an excuse to withdraw my admission to the New Jersey courts on the pretext that her message in some way was attributable to me and therefore constituted my violation of the canon of ethics that precluded me from discussing the legal aspects of the criminal charges pending against her. And I had no doubt that the prosecutor would quickly make a motion for my removal as soon as the tape was played. I believed that I could best represent Joey because, having resigned from NYU on the day of her arrest so that I could be available to her, I was able to devote all of my time to preparing the necessary pretrial motions and conducting the investigations that Ray Brown's busy schedule did not permit. And he had agreed to sponsor Charlie and me on condition that I assume responsibility for the bulk of the pretrial efforts. Ray's presence was required at each court appearance, during which pretrial motions were orally argued, during jury selection, and on each day of the trial when it began. We paid Ray a relatively small retainer, but the vast amount of work he ended up doing amounted to pro bono representation. I was concerned that the prison brutality that might resurface would go unchallenged should I be disqualified from representing Joey. As her attorney, I could visit daily and would be made aware of such incidents immediately. My involvement was even more important because Joey was permitted no telephone calls, not even to her attorneys during an emergency. I was also in the process of preparing a motion for a court order permitting physical therapy for her paralysis. In addition, we had been preparing a motion for a change of venue from Middlesex County based on prejudicial pretrial publicity. We argued that the massive negative media coverage associating Joey with the BLA and the unproven crimes alleged to have been committed by that group had so biased prospective jurors against Sundiata and Joey that a fair trial was impossible. I was concerned that her admission of association with the BLA might undermine the thrust of our motion and, in a perverse way, contribute to the court's denial of the motion.
Affirmation by Assata Shakur. I believe in living. I believe in the spectrum of better days and gamma people. I believe in sunshine, in windmills, in waterfalls, tricycles, and rocking chairs. And I believe that seeds grow into sprouts, and that sprouts grow into trees. I believe in the magic of the hands, and in the wisdom of the eyes. I believe in rain and tears, and in the blood of infinity. I believe in life. I have seen the death parade march through the torso of the earth, sculpting mud bodies in its path. I have seen the destruction of daylight and seen bloodthirsty maggots prayed to and saluted. I have seen the kind become the blind and the blind become the band in one easy lesson. I have walked on cut glass. I have eaten crow and blunder bread and breathed the stench of indifference. I have been locked by the lawless, handcuffed by the haters, gagged by the greedy, and if I know anything at all, it's that a wall is just a wall, and nothing more at all. It can be broken down. I believe in living. I believe in birth. I believe in the sweat of love and in the fire of truth. And I believe that a lost ship steered by tired, seasick sailors can still be guided home to port. Thank you.
Katherine Massey Book Club. That was Assata Shakur, who we heard, one of those captured in the arrest from the turnpike. He was reading Affirmation from Assata Shakur. That was before she transitioned. So that was something that Assata wrote, titled Affirmation, read by Assata Shakur, victim of white supremacy. Any hoodles, we will continue audio segment 2 coming up. Our pause. If you have thoughts, observations on the first audio segment, the number to dial 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email untiljustice@gmail.com. Now, there were many folks mentioned, important people, attorneys, politicians, I guess racists, mentioned throughout the text. Tried to check some. One of the other reasons I always enjoy reading biographies, you learn so much. Who are some of these people? Sometimes it's difficult, a book like this, where they mention a lot of folks. But, try and check, especially if it might be somebody constructive. Hey, who is this person? Who did they just say? Who was that? One of the folks that they mentioned, Henrietta Turnquest. She recently passed away. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They write, Carl Turnquest recalled a scary day in 1960. The 12-year-old, his 13-year-old sister Henrietta, and a younger sibling, Teresa, set out on the New York subway to attend their mother's sorority event. The trio got lost changing trains. The younger siblings got worried. Henrietta stayed calm and got busy. She quizzed subway employees for directions, herded and reassured her siblings, and quite literally got them back on track. We got there an hour late, but we got there. Carl recalled, she just had determination and stick-to-itiveness. Determination personified Henrietta Turnquest as she became an attorney, state lawmaker, and community activist in her adopted home of Georgia. That plus fearlessness and the ability to spot problems and bring coalitions together made her a trailblazer. My mother was in the vanguard, said son Malcolm Turnquest, noting that she was initially one of fewer than 50 black female attorneys in Georgia and among the first handful of women of color elected to the Georgia General Assembly. She became the first black woman to serve as an assistant floor leader for Governor Roy Barnes and spearheaded the integration of the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. Oh, so white women, they've had an association and been advocating? Wow. They didn't need no affirmative action for white chicks in the law field? Wow. And they didn't immediately reach out, olive branch, sisterhood to their black sisters, their dark sisters, their brown sisters. They didn't do it. No. Henrietta Turnquest, 73, died of complications of Alzheimer's March 29 in Mobile, Alabama. A memorial service was held April 26. She always stood her ground. I put you down. Pow. Oh, maybe that's not what they mean. Recalled State Senator Nan Orrock, who served with Turnquest in State House. She was very clear about standing up for African Americans at the table and addressing the myriad examples of discrimination, white supremacy, racism that abounded. Younger sister Teresa Gale Snipe thinks it stemmed from her lessons learned early. She said on a family trip to Florida, the New Yorkers stopped at a large hotel and entertainment complex in South Carolina. We've been talking about South Carolina a lot this week, right? Right. My father knew that they didn't accept black people, but he drove right up and walked his butt through that front door. I guess he wanted them to tell him to his face that they couldn't stay there, Snipe said. Race soldiers will gladly oblige you. Hey. Turnquest championed small business owners, African American entrepreneurs, seniors, and child welfare advocates working on behalf of a myriad of organizations in both legislative and later a lobbying role. Her big thing was public policy advocacy, said attorney Betty Ann Hart, a fellow legislator at this time. She wanted to engage communities with what was going on after an election. Most people think if you just vote somebody in, it will be okay. No, you should not think that. No. A turning point for Turnquest came in 1968 when she was a senior at Spelman College. What? And the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Family said the tragedy spurred her to go to law school and into the public arena. Initially, she wanted to be a teacher, said Malcolm Turnquest, but when that happened, she said, I want to help the people. Turnquest returned to New York for law school, then headed south, practicing in Savannah and Columbus before winning a state representative seat from DeKalb County in 1990, serving until 2002. He goes on to give a little bit more information, but wow, we were talking last week saying that Evelyn Williams is quite admirable. Like, she does so many things that are heroic and just trying to produce justice. Maybe the same could be said for Henrietta Turnquest, who passed away at I think, like 73. I mean, I guess that's not dying at 50. So, But, man, I think we should be here a lot longer than 73. Help, and particularly if you are trying to do the correct thing, trying to help black people who need help the most. Oh, yeah. We need you to stick around, I'm a pull Strom Thurmond, hang out, 105, 110. I got lots of correcting to do because we got lots of problems. They said she was a problem solver. That's what we need. Black problem solver about justice and helping black people. Jesus, can we clone you? Hope she had children, a bunch of them. So that's one of the folks that was mentioned, touched Evelyn Williams along the way. She said she was so proud of her. And that's one of the folks that I think she said they were trying to throw Miss Turnquest out of law school. Said, oh, no, you one of these old lame, retarded niggers, and so you got low GPA your first time. And you had low LSAT too. Yeah, beat it. We don't need you around here. See? I think, if my memory right, that was one of the ones. They were going to toss her out. And look at that. Folks who dialed in, 716-7300. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. And we were totally slowed down. I think folks said from the first week it was a little too fast, so I slowed him down last week, although it took a little remembering. Corrected, got it slowed, and then this week, no correcting needed from the very beginning, had the speed exactly where I wanted it to be. And yeah, I think that at least from my view, from what it was initially, like I guess the default setting, to where it's set at now, I think it's substantially slower, at least to me. But folks would have to let me know. As I said before, it could be a little slower, I reckon, but you all would have to let me know, like, slow it down a little bit more. You're still taking us too fast, so we can, understand. But I think that's about, especially we've read a lot of audiobooks. Some of the like real authentic people, they read kind of fast. So yeah, that, at least to my ear, this seems right on par with what I would expect. And at minimum, I don't have any difficulties like grasping what's being said or anything of that nature. Like, good job to the AI. Let's see. While folks are, I guess, getting their thoughts, star 61, getting their observations and thoughts, we'll nab one email. Email number 1. Let's see. Greetings, Gus, listeners, callers. Chapter 7. In 1968 New York University Vista program, Vista volunteers were all white. Rich joked throughout the orientation, "It does not get any better than tacky." What's so funny? In fact, she's 1968. That's the year she's talking about for the Vista program. We just heard Miss Turnquest said, 1968, Dr. King getting assassinated. I changed my whole life. I changed my career, my field of study, everything as a result of what happened in 1968. And that's April 4. That's the beginning of the year, Wouldn't that be first third of the year, right? Barely got past April Fool's Day. So that's Miss Turnquest. That's her response. White people, are they telling racist jokes at the Vista program? Minstrel show type thing at the Vista program? Come on. 2. 1967 Kerner Commission riots caused by militant organizations. Increased surveillance and intervention. Commission cooperated in these organizations. Mirrored the stated COINTELPRO goals. Another example of the Voltron effect. That is important because I've heard the Kerner report talked about so many times, the fact that they get to this militant niggers and we got to keep an eye on them. Like, what? Wait a minute. What about the militant terrorist white people who keep black people from getting jobs and beat up black people under the guise of being a so-called enforcement officer? What about all that? Militant niggers. Come on. 3. The Vista program offering young lawyers automatic exemption from the draft. 9th area of people activity, war in the global system of racism, white supremacy. I was thinking, like, there were a lot, like, that's kind of notorious about draft dodgers during this time period. And so when I looked online, the first name that it gave for notable draft dodgers of this time period, and I was appalled, was Muhammad Ali. Oh, how dare. Beat it up, but I think that might have been AI. Victim of racism, he was not a draft dodger. That is a disgrace. So we put that one aside. Most notable, they had Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, even that, so the Negro draft dodger loses his whole career, millions of dollars, prime of his, fighting days, all the rest of it. Takes years to even live that down, if at all. Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, they dodged the draft, become millionaires, and 2-term presidents of the United States. And they come and say, white privilege. Get out of here. And Negro male privilege for Muhammad Ali, because that's like exactly what they said, brain damage and all. 4. Leroy Clark, only full-time black professor at the law school. He was untenured, protected against racial or sex discrimination by hiring me, meaning the university. That they would hire him, and then they hired her, Evelyn Williams. So they could say, hey, we're not racist. See, we got these two niggers. We put them out front showcasing, and then we're not sexist or anything else because you saw one of the niggers is female, right? So, hey, we don't have no problem with niggers, females. We are on the up and up. And then they go out and tell racist jokes. Workplace racism is a major theme of this text. Yes, it is. The racism in general, but yes. And even, pause really quick, I said check some of these people. LDF mourns the loss of Leroy D. Clark, LDF counsel and venerated law professor. Scroll down. LDF mourns the loss of civil rights attorney, law professor, and former LDF counsel Leroy D. Clark. Mr. Clark passed away last week in Washington, D.C. He was 85 years old. Now, that's a little bit better, but still, that's, we lose a lot of years because of the system of white supremacy. Mr. Clark was born on April 27, 1934 in New York, New York. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from the City College of New York in 1956 and earned his law degree from Columbia University in 1961. He spent his early legal career at LDF, serving as a staff attorney from 1962 to 1968 during the height of the civil rights era that same year. In his first few years at LDF, Mr. Clark primarily worked in Florida, handling several school desegregation cases along with others related to fair employment and criminal justice reform. He also partnered with local attorneys across the state to file suits to desegregate businesses, including restaurants, hospitals, parks, and a barber shop. In the mid to late 1960s, Mr. Clark played an integral role in LDF's civil rights work, serving alongside former director counsel Jack Greenberg to represent some of the most prominent and history-making civil rights icons and activists of that era. Leroy Clark was involved in representing civil rights activists at some of the most critical moments of the civil rights movement, said Sherilyn Eiffel, LDF's president and director counsel. We read her Swiss sister Gwen Eiffel's book right after Obama left office. The Breakthrough, that's what it called. Oh, that book did not age well. Anyway, he was just a few years out of law school when he was entrusted by then director counsel Jack Greenberg with handling some of LDF's most important work, including the development of LDF's portfolio of cases that directly focused on the intersection of poverty and race. He was a leader in the academy for decades and remained dedicated to the issue of justice and equality that he advanced as an LDF lawyer. Indeed, Mr. Clark was the supervisor of the legal representation during LDF's partnership with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Poor People's Campaign, a weeks-long protest 1968 to secure economic justice and equality for people of color. In this role, Mr. Clark helped put together a comprehensive plan for LDF staff and volunteers to assist in carrying out campaigns, directives, something which former director counsel Greenberg highlighted in his book Crusaders in the Courts. Beyond his work with the Poor People's Campaign, Mr. Clark also provided legal support for protesters during many other historic civil rights demonstrations, including the Mississippi Freedom Rides, the Selma Marches, and the St. Augustine Movement, among others. It does go on. I will stop there, but just, wow. I mean, same thing that I just said, like, wow. Heroic. Justice. Can we clone him too? Like, man. And I think this is another one of them old lame black dudes. Hey, Leroy, we shouldn't have let that. We should have seen the name on the application. Get on out of here, Leroy. Beat it. And you got a lame GPA. See, and your LSAT scores lower than a nickel. See, get on out of here, Leroy. And Evelyn Williams, I think that's another one. She said, yeah, no, wait a minute, we can't boot Leroy. We need Leroy. And then look what he accomplished. Wow. Worked on the poor people's campaign. Come on. Dr. King got assassinated before they could even carry all that out. Right on. This is from December of 2019, the death of Leroy D. Clark at 85 years of age. Let's see, continuing our email. Number 5, undesirable organizations fight back. Parents of Ocean Hill, Brownsville schools. Does undesirable mean they were trying to counter racism, white supremacy? Yes, it also could just mean it was black people there, because Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly, he told us that you could just be classified as black. You didn't necessarily have to be out protesting and, oh, I'm with Dr. King, and oh, I was at the march, and oh, I'm a Panther. I mean, oh yeah, we'll pay attention to you for that too, but you can just be black. That alone means that you are suspect, because we know we practice racism against you, so you might be mad about anything. We got to keep an eye on you. Let's see. 6. Vista volunteers, law students. The experience permanently altered the career directions of many. Did they stop practicing racism, white supremacy as a result of their experience? Excellent question, because she mentioned Andrew Loeb, L-O-E-B, and she said that, it changed him so much, and he was a practicing attorney at the time. I tried to go and see, what is he doing now? Has he been doing, 4 or 5 decades of criminal justice reform and pro bono work to help get Mumia Sundiata Akola out of prison? He was helping Khalif Browder. What has he been doing since he is so transformed from this experience? Let us know. Vista had such an impact. Let's see. 8. Black Allied Law Students Association, BALSA, expressed reason given by the white students for their pervasive hostility. Minority students guarantee tuition. Carnegie Foundation grants the Root Tilden Scholarship. White students, 2 recipients were black. Their issue was with black students, no minority students. I think that is super accurate, and they're hostile. And even I'm reminded, I was just at a lecture here in Seattle. They were talking about how a white woman said there are too many doctors, and she was corrected by a black doctor who said there are too many white doctors, to which there was a soft applause. There are too many white lawyers. All that cronyism and years of not allowing non-white people into law school, or you don't allow them to take the bar or to pass the bar. There are too many white lawyers, and they're not even qualified and competent, many of them, but just my dad was a lawyer and my grandma, Alec Murdoch type thing. Get him 2 mentions for this week too. You don't know who that is, Get the AI, say, who is Alec Murdoch, South Carolina? Say, oh boy, sit down. Let me tell you. Let's see. 9. Differences between financial resources of minority and white families. 90% of minority students worked despite school's prohibition on working during the first year. No black student during my years flunked out. Second area of people activity, education in the global system of racism. Miss Williams' treatment of black students, I think, an example of codification. Absolutely. Try to offer helping people who need the most help. That's it exactly. You're going to take people that we said we're going to try and help these folks out, and they had a tough time, and they're not legacy students and all that. And then we're going to be the first ones, oh, get on out of here. Well, I just got here. I only did one semester. That's tough. You slipping. You ain't doing the work, and you trying to look at these white women, and you blah, 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 and get on out of here, Leroy. And for real this time. No. That alone, no, come on, y'all tripping. And that work requirement. If they're not supposed to be working, then you should have money, all that set aside, so that is not going to be an issue, even if it has to just be a loan or whatever, a grant, something. It can't be that you got all these students that are just breaking the rule, and then we come to find that they end up having some sort of academic deficits because they can't invest all of their time studying. They got to spend a big chunk of their week working at Taco Bell or whatever to get hours to cover their school fees. Like, come on, do better. If we just got the Kerner Commission report too, do better. Let's see. They considered me too unimportant to be looked at directly. Wow. Examples of workplace racism is rife in this text. Absolutely. That is like current 2025, where you're not even, important enough. Or, in fact, we are so racist, we don't even dignify you with giving you direct eye contact. We'll talk to you without even looking at you type of a thing. 11. My involvement with the black undergraduate students. They considered Roscoe Brown, the head of Black Studies Department, a part of the system. Mr. Brown was a Tuskegee Airman during World War II. Wow. He participated in the longest air mission of all time, 1,600-mile round trip escorting B-17 planes to Berlin. Sig Heil. First to shoot down German fighter pilots over Berlin. After the war, he had a long history in education, including obtaining a Ph.D. Get it, Dr. Brown, in exercise physiology at New York. He later developed an interdisciplinary institute for African American studies at NYU. He subsequently had leadership roles in education at SUNY and Bronx Community College. He was also a delegate from the Bronx, New York for Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign in 1983 and 1984. Now that for sure means you are a part of the system. He transitioned in 2016 at the age of 94. Get it, Dr. He did say he got that degree in physiology, so he learned, yeah, buddy, you're not going to chitlin me and fruit by the foot, Tahitian treat. See, he got his exercise in, drank his, 94. Boy, I done shot down Nazi Germans and battled and did plan, and then get to do all that and say, you sell out. I can't get up. I can't get up. I can't get up. I can't get up. Woo! Like, wait a minute. Hitler shot at me, like, for real. Hitler shot at me, man. That's what I say about these old Uncle Tom. I can't get up. Oh, man, I'm wounded. I can't even get up. I'm going to stop there on the email because Dr. Brown, Jesus Christ. Oh, I forgot the last sentence. He said, wait a minute, I'm sorry. He transitioned in 2016 at the age of 94. Longevity has its place, said Dr. King. We are all part of the global system of racism, white supremacy. Facts. We get quick on that, boy. You old ancient sellout. I'm going in for a long time. We get quick on that. Like, woo. Sorry you had to endure all that, Dr. Brown. Wow. But he did live along. Longevity has its place, I reckon. That is very, or at least Gus T., very impressive, Dr. Brown. Wow, you are putting us to shame with your accomplishments, sir. Alrighty, let's see. We'll have to get back to the email once I get it together. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. We'll see if folks have observations, thoughts from first portion of the read. I'll get in a few of my notes, double check. If not, we can quickly get to audio segment number 2. Let's see. Some of the notes I took from the first portion. Let me go back to the beginning of chapter 7. Okay. all of the rich white students in the Vista program, and again, this is 1968, so Dr. King, COINTELPRO, all of that. Do I think they're here to replace white supremacy with justice? No. And I too would have been curious, why are they here? And she admitted too, I thought it was important, she said she really was not like prepared. She really hadn't had any sort of training in terms of how to function, what to do, what not to do to be in this sort of environment. I think that also, unfortunately, is very common, where we haven't really had honest discussion about what it means to be white. Do you go into your entertainment role? What do you do? And you're around a lot of smart, powerful white young ladies and dudes. So what do I do? And you just kind of have to figure it out as best you can, basically. That's still true to a large degree. Let's see. When she talks, she says, academia rapidly descends from its lofty perch of intellectual and exclusionary purity when offered large sums of money called bribes by ordinary people. Man, I thought of Varsity Blues. We talked about all them white people who faked, lied. I've been doing fencing for 5 years, state championship, and I did water polo, and they lied and faked all these grades and just paid money to get in all these expensive schools where they have no intention of like going to class and working hard. Just, I got into, Stanford. I stayed there 6 years and, graduated in, whatever. I might not even graduated, but I went, got in. I went, boy, they got some parties. Woo! That sort of thing. But Brian, and then come back when you got all that cronyism. You got all that nepotism. I got in because I got a friend on the admissions board. I got in because my grandfather went here. My mom went here. My aunt went here. My aunt gave $100,000. My aunt gave $500,000 and helped them get a new wing. And so I got in. You got decades of white people doing that. I mean, more than a century at this point of white people doing that sort of thing. Not so much with the Negro. Let's see. Kerner Report. Mr. Fuller used to mention the Kerner Report all the time, really just to talk about, hey, white people are not ignorant. They cited in great detail all the different ways that racism, white supremacy produces these, what they call it, two separate, unequal, so that they know all of that, and that they got big books and all that. We don't even need any more of that. Just produce justice. Get to it. Let's see. Said, so a part of COINTELPRO apparently, they said, was to absorb and deflect. That sounds like real scientific COINTELPRO type language. To absorb and deflect militant opposition to the Vietnam War by offering young lawyers automatic exemption from the draft. That's like Bill Clinton type of a thing. But I mean, wow, we don't want them to get too rowdy, so we'll get you out of the draft and maybe even help get you into law school, as provided you're not doing too much talking about white supremacy, racism. We don't want too many Johnny Cochrans type of a thing. Let's see. They say a credible facade of racial inclusion was constructed by appointing Leroy Clark, the only full-time black professor at the law school, albeit untenured, to chair, and then they got her in racial showcase. And that's such a sophisticated example of racial showcasing. You pick one Negro and you're not tenured, so we can get rid of you if you step out of line. And then another Negro female, so we double dipped on that one, and we don't have to hire no more Negroes at all. And this is like 68. So, I mean, we got a sophisticated code about now. They get around all that and say, oh, we got about 15 transgender, disabled, elderly, lesbian, white. So we pretty, and we get some neurodivergent whites in there too. Hey, we covered all the places. We don't even bring Leroy and them on. Let's see. They said they wanted some of these, why they were trying to dilute minorities. So we're going to have white people in as minority. Same thing they do all the time, where affirmative action white people are the greatest beneficiaries. And I guess you can already see the structuring of this, because they're going to say, well, wait a minute, whoa. Instead of Leroy, we'll take, we got these white Cubans, don't we? Yes, we'll take the white Cubans. We'll get them. And we got some white people born in Mexico, don't we? Yeah, that's where we'll get them. We got the white Mexicans. We got any white Canadians, white Ukrainians, white Italians. Oh, yeah, let's get all we get. Oh, no, back up, Leroy. We got little, what's your name? I don't even remember, but she's from, where you from? Mexico, Argentina? Yes, we got lots of these white folks. Yes, let's get the white Argentinians. Come on down. Leroy will get you if we got space. And they do that today. I mentioned Ukraine. They do that today. Cuba, they do that today. Alien Gonzalez from some years back. Let's see. And this is one where specifically we just don't want no niggers here at the law school. We don't want no Johnny Cochrans. Let's see. It didn't matter to the white students resentful of the 10% minority set-asides for entering classes that only 1% of lawyers in the U.S. were African Americans. Real talk, it's not supposed to be one. That's how they think. It's not supposed to be one. We ain't supposed to have no Johnny Cochrans. So 10%? Are you serious? Are you serious? My cousin's supposed to have one of them spots. My white nephew's supposed to have one of them spots. My white grandson's supposed to have one of them spots. You let some nigger heifer who can't even read get the and you hear the same thing now. And this is what, 60 years ago? You hear the exact same verbiage, like it's the same people, like they didn't even die. And she gets all the data and such that white people already know this, that we got more money and we got legacy and we got books and the niggers don't, and how that impacts health and probably your ability to concentrate in class. Like, white people know all that. They know all of that. They do not need no, oh, wow. Thank you so much, Miss Williamson. I had never even considered the impact of how that your brain development being under all this stress and the amount of wealth that we've accumulated. I never even thought of that. Thank you so much for opening my eyes. Like, no, that's not what this is at all. Not even close. Let's see. They had Martin Luther King scholarships to try to offset tuition, book, dormitory costs. I'd be curious to see if those scholarships even exist now. They might have been DEI'd out of existence. Let's see. The passage stood out to me. I said I took a lot of notes, but this is on page 73, second paragraph. She said, I suffered as the murders continued into the 1950s and 1960s. So it's lots of people killed during this time period. Cutting down the young civil rights workers who had joined Dr. Martin Luther King's marches through the South as they fought for desegregation and voting rights, remaining steadfastly nonviolent and non-retaliatory despite their vitriolic attacks on them. Pause even for, with this nonviolent stuff will get you killed, and we will shoot back. Two very important books that talk about almost the myth of nonviolence, because so many of the black people that were around Dr. King and the SNCC activists and others, they were armed and totally rejected the notion, what? I'm going to give up my stuff. Stuff is my firearm. I'm going to give up my stuff and just let these racists kill me? No. Though there are two books I just mentioned, We Will Shoot Back and That Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed. And that was written by Charles E. Cobb. He was one of those SNCC activists who was down there in Mississippi and such, and that's how he got the title from. Black people said they don't know. White people kill for fun. I'm keeping my stuff. Y'all go out and do all that nonviolence. Yeah. I got your back though. got my stuff. I got your back. And Mr. Charles Scott said he was so thankful that they kept their stuff because, yes, that nonviolent stuff, it will get you killed for sure. Now, continues. And as the KKK punctuated its contempt for their passivity by assassinating white civil rights workers who had joined the movement for freedom, and I agonized as more civil rights legislation passed, checked and checkmated. That even stuck out to me because it's like, man, now she didn't give the names, but man, Viola Louisa, those two white boys, Viola Louisa was a white female, killed, I believe, in 1968. Mississippi, those two white boys who were killed with James Chaney in Mississippi in 1964, Freedom Summer, and James Reed, white minister in Alabama during the Selma campaign, who was killed. That becomes a big part of emotional and dramatic of Ava DuVernay's film. I and many, many others have pointed out for more than a half century, like, hey, there were so many black people killed during that time period, you can't even name them all. You really can't. How is it that these white people end up taking so much sympathy, and everybody has to know about those two white boys who died with James Chaney? No, I do not have any extra sympathy, and these white sacrifices, if anything, hey, white people are not ignorant about racism. If you are white and you are ignorant, in quotes, about racism, other white people will alert you to your mistakes. This would be an illustration, not all white people is racist. Get out of here. I'm submitting it's racist that we even have to focus on these white people, the small number who were killed by other white people. They were Charlie Kirked in comparison to the black people that were killed during this exact same period. We can start with James Chaney. Let's see. In fact, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, they changed their name. Student National Coordinating Committee, because this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. Chapter 8. So she's getting into the Turnpike shooting and how it was reported and all the lies in the paper where they're calling her the high priestess of the cop-hating Black Liberation Army. I didn't even talked about they just had a white person ambush and kill law officers in Pennsylvania. And then they had that white fella shoot up the detention facility the CDC, the detention center too, but the different white person shot up the CDC in Georgia, killed a black, an enforcement officer, Mr. Rose, black male. I didn't hear white people up in arms about either event. Like, what? You didn't kill the police officer out in front of the CDC? No outrage, no new laws, none of that. Same thing up in Pennsylvania. A white man ambushes and kills, I believe it was 3 enforcement officers in Pennsylvania. Whereas what? Oh, you don't kill our finest. None of that. White cop killers? Yeah. Assata is alleged to have participated in this shootout. The high priestess, she's committed every crime in the history of man. Come on. And it's to the point where they just flagrantly say, hey, veteran cops incensed by the murders and attacks on fellow officers said privately that they would shoot her down on sight if given the opportunity. That sounds like you're not trying to take her in, find out what happened. Were there some other militant niggers involved? No. Eye for an eye. Tooth for a tooth. Life for a life. We ain't taking you to no Burger King. I'm going to empty my gun. I see that nigger woman. Think, whoa. That's not what. Wait a minute. And I just told you now, you got examples. White people going out and killing enforcement officers. I don't think white people got all excited and we're going to go shoot you. Come on. They didn't even talk about these cases. Let's see. And it reminded me when we read Lucky, Alice Sebold, where she talked about where her white friend was allegedly raped later on in the book, and her white male friends, they were so mad they couldn't even see straight, but they were going to go out and eye for an eye. We're going to do some castrate. Said, couldn't even see well, so any Negro will do, we're going to do some castrating. Any Negro will do. Let's see, all of the detail, I think at least some of that it is in Assata's memoir, but where they won't give her access, her family can't see her in the hospital, like she could die. She's being terrorized and threatened by the guards. Miss Williams says she enters the room to talk to her niece, and they got the shotguns pointed, get out of here, Thompson, get out of here. Yeah. All the Nazi rhetoric, like, do what? Do what? Make sure I get each day the threats to Joey became more vicious, soon accompanied by shotgun butts jabbed into her body, nighttime storming around her bed, and the shouting of Nazi slogans by the German descendants who made up a large part of the state trooper force. Do what? Do what? And then see, how do we have all these Germans that like, where's the native sentiment? Like, we only want U.S. born. Get on it, because Fuller say they don't have all that hyphenation. White stands alone. They don't know I'm a white U.S. I'm white Mexican. I'm white German. I'm white Brit. White. I'm just highlighting. Well, the guards, they're just highlighting their German so that we can terrorize you. What I said, Sig Heil. Joey, that's what they're going to say. You ain't no Assata. Sig Heil. Joey. They in here highlighting I'm German white. I'm highlighting that I'm racist. Negro woman. Where they go? Schwartz, ain't that what you say? Schwarzer? Negra, ain't that Negra German? Schwarzer? Blackie? Sig Heil, understand that? Ain't no German white. I'm a race soldier. You see the shotgun in your face? I'm a race soldier. You saw what Adolf did? I'm a race soldier. White. That's what it means. Let's see. It sounds so dangerous. Like, I don't know, if I was her attorney talking about Assata, I don't know if I want to stay on the case. Like, good Lord. The judge then threatened me. Like, you're not even supposed to be practicing in the Garden State, so be on your P's and Q's, and don't you talk to the press no more either. Like, yes, sir, I'm behave, keep quiet, okay. And then you try to go see your client, and they got the Nazi, Sig Heil Williams, Sig Heil Schwarzer. What? They got the shotgun in my flip. Whoa. Look here, Joey. Assata, whatever your name is. I didn't sign up for all this. I have a tough time as it is. I don't do no lawyering with a shotgun in my face. I'm going to have to recuse myself from, because I don't even practice law in New Jersey. I could have came up with excuses out the yin-yang. They didn't renege. I would be talking to the press every day, see if I can make sure I get thrown off this case. Like, ooh, the FBI coming to talk to me. What you doing? Where you going? Where's Joey at? Breaking into my house? Like, do what? Do what? I ain't even signed up for all this. I'm not in the Black Liberation Army. I don't hang out with them black people. I don't even like black people like that. Like, man. She didn't say nothing. She just kept. She is heroic. You can say that again. We said that last week. Say it again. 3 weeks in a row. Wow. I don't know if Gus T would have been that courageous. You call me cowardly and a coon and okay, what the sellout? What they said? He part of the system too. That old no count Gus, old agency, and you just put a shotgun in his face. He gonna turn yellow. Yep. Yeah, I done forgot everything I was supposed to say. What we said some. Replace white? Oh, no, I ain't even. You let Fuller have all that RWS. What is it? I don't know. Yeah, I forgot the rest of it. Yeah, I'm gonna go over here and sit down quietly. Thank you kindly. Call me chicken if you need to. Let's see. Anything else? I reckon that will satisfy. We didn't really get all the way through chapter 8 in the text, so we will resume. We'll be kind of in the midpoint of chapter 8, but I reckon that can satisfy me for the time being. Let's see. Retired firefighter in Florida. Well, actually, y'all waited. They waited a teaspoon because I didn't really have hands up, so y'all can take your notes and we'll get you second time around because it'll throw our timing off. So should have got your hands up earlier. Folks who dialed in with hand up, take notes. We will get you once the second audio segment concludes. Again, this is Evelyn Williams Inadmissible Evidence, Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment 2.
Despite my reluctance to tape Joey's July 4th statement, and after discussing all of my apprehensions with her, I was finally persuaded that what she considered her political responsibilities were paramount and that as much as I wanted to protect her, it was her decision to live her life as she had determined it must be lived. At this early stage of my 7-year representation of her, I relinquished her as my child and accepted her as an adult for whom I had a special responsibility, which did not include making political decisions for her, regardless of the legal consequences. I looked at her large-eyed, stubborn intensity, undemanding but imploring, magnifying the fragility of her body from which hung her helpless right arm, and I held the microphone close to her mouth. From that day, she became for me what her African name meant, Assata, she who struggles, Olugbala, love for the people, Shakur, the grateful, and I never called her Joey again. Assata's statement was aired over every black radio station in New York City and New Jersey, criticized by the white media, and published in the journal Black Scholar. She said, "Black brothers, black sisters, I want you to know that I love you, and I hope that somewhere in your hearts you have love for me. My name is Assata Shakur, slave name Joan Chesimard, and I am a revolutionary, a black revolutionary. By that, I mean that I have declared war on all the forces that have raped our women, castrated our men, and kept our babies empty-bellied. I have declared war on the rich who prosper on our poverty, the politicians who lie to us with smiling faces, and all the mindless, heartless robots who protect them and their property. I am a black revolutionary, and by definition, that makes me a part of the Black Liberation Army. They call us murderers, but we do not control or enforce a system of racism and oppression that systematically murders black and third world people. Although black people supposedly comprise about 15% of the total American population, at least 60% of murder victims are black. For every pig that is killed in the so-called line of duty, there are at least 50 black people murdered by police. Black life expectancy is much lower than white, and they do their best to kill us before we are born. We are burned alive in fire-trap tenements. Our brothers and sisters OD daily from heroin and methadone. Our babies die from lead poisoning. Millions of black people have died as a result of indecent medical care. This is murder. But they have the gall to call us murderers. They call us thieves and bandits. They say we steal, but it was not we who stole millions of black people from the continent of Africa. We were robbed of our language, of our gods, of our culture, of our human dignity, of our labor, and of our lives. They call us thieves, yet it is not we who rip off billions of dollars every year through tax evasions, illegal price fixing, embezzlement, consumer fraud, bribes, kickbacks, and swindles. They call us bandits, yet every time most black people pick up our paychecks, we are being robbed. Every time we walk into a store in our neighborhoods, we are being held up. And every time we pay our rent, the landlord sticks a gun in our ribs. Every revolution in history has been accomplished by actions, although words are necessary. We must create shields that protect us and spears that penetrate our enemies. Black people must learn how to struggle by struggling. We must learn by our mistakes. I want to apologize to you, my black brothers and sisters, for being on the New Jersey Turnpike. I should have known better. The Turnpike is a checkpoint where black people are stopped, searched, harassed, and assaulted. Revolutionaries must never be in too much of a hurry or make careless decisions. He who runs when the sun is sleeping will stumble many times. Every time a black freedom fighter is murdered or captured, the pigs try to create the impression that they have quashed the movement, destroyed our forces, and put down the black revolution. The pigs also try to give the impression that 5 or 10 guerrillas are responsible for every revolutionary action carried out in America. That is nonsense. That is absurd. Black revolutionaries do not drip from the moon. We are created by our conditions, shaped by our oppression. We are being manufactured in droves in the ghetto streets, places like Attica, San Quentin, Bedford Hills, Leavenworth, and Sing Sing. They are turning out thousands of us. Many jobless black veterans and welfare mothers are joining our ranks. Brothers and sisters from all walks of life who are tired of suffering passively make up the BLA. There is and always will be, until every black man, woman, and child is free, a Black Liberation Army. The main function of the Black Liberation Army at this time is to create good examples, to struggle for black freedom, and to prepare for the future. We must defend ourselves and let no one disrespect us. We must gain our liberation by any means necessary. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. In the spirit of Ronald Carter, William Christmas, Mark Clark, Mark Essex, Frank Heavy Fields, Woody Chang-Olugbala Green, Fred Hampton, Lil Bobby Hutton, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, James McLean, Harold Russell, Zaid Malik Shakur, and Anthony Jumu Olugbala White, we must fight on. As I had anticipated, the day after the tape was played, Hamlin, the prosecutor, rushed before the court with a motion to censure me and remove me from the case. In his affidavit, he stated that I acted to create sympathy for the accused and to inflame the public by her statements in the media and in the newspapers in order to deprive the state of a fair trial. Detective Harold Bott submitted an affidavit claiming that Assata and I had met to prepare a political and revolutionary speech, a call to arms, a little short of a call to treason. While maintaining her legal and moral innocence, the defendant in inflammatory terms accused the authorities, charging them with murder and kidnapping. The broadcast was designed to affect the thinking of potential jurors and was obviously calculated to destroy the rights of the state to a fair trial. And the assistant prosecutor, Nicholas Strounsos, indignantly denounced the speech, stating that Assata falsely accused law enforcement authorities of trying to lynch her and of receiving orders to shoot on sight and shoot to kill prior to her arrest on the turnpike. But it was not until August 20th that the trial judge, John E. Bachman, issued a ruling. Ray and Charlie had made brilliant presentations urging him to carefully consider any ruling that would abridge the defendant's free speech in violation of her First Amendment rights. The judge ruled that I could no longer bring a tape recorder to the prison, but he did not remove me from the case. Weeks of uncertainty were over, and after a momentary pause of relief, we continued our preparation for trial. Chapter 9. The trial was scheduled to begin on September 6, 1973, a nightmarish impossibility because private conferences between Assata and me had been prevented by Sheriff Joseph DeMarino, whose arbitrary control over all jail facilities in Middlesex County rejected the most elementary requirement of attorney-client meetings, that of privacy. And the same was true of joint conferences held with Sundiata and Charlie McKinney to plan a common defense. Only in the first week of August, after we had made several motions, did the judge order that the doors to the conference room and to Assata's cell during my visits be closed, and we were able to plan our legal strategy. During the open-door sheriff-monitored conferences, Assata and Sundiata made the most of their temporary release from solitary confinement. They hugged each other in hilarious greetings, whispered secrets to each other, and ridiculed the entire justice system. Sundiata, who had been incarcerated for 2 years on the phony charges in the Panther 21 case when he could not make the $100,000 bail, jokingly compared down North justice with the Up South brand. He was a theoretician, orderly in his thought processes, a mathematical analyst by profession, and a cool player in the mad, untidy world of inequality into which he had been born in Texas. The permanent furrow between his young eyebrows belied his easy, unhurried manner, and if he ever ventilated anger, I never saw it. Both he and Assata had an equilibrium, an inner balance that seemed to be immune to external pressures, except to the degree they chose to define and respond to them. Our precious time was frittered away filing motions to obtain for our defendants the most rudimentary rights bestowed on every other prisoner, for art supplies, books, and even for Assata's grandparents to be allowed to visit when they came from North Carolina to see her. Although relatives of other inmates could bring them food, my mother's marble cake, which Assata so ovid, was considered contraband. Newspapers were banned, and 91 Assata was considered too much of a security risk to eat with the other women. She could make no phone calls, even emergency calls to me as her lawyer, and Sundiata walked barefoot on the cold cement floors of his cell because socks or sneakers were considered security risks. Although a court order had been signed for a physical therapist licensed in the state of New Jersey to treat Assata at the workhouse, no therapist was willing to come to the jail, and the court refused to transport Assata to Middlesex Hospital for treatment. It took another motion from me to provide Assata with a small rubber ball to squeeze in an attempt to regenerate the severed median nerve in her right arm. Some motions were automatic, as in any felony case, such as a challenge to the indictment because legally insufficient evidence had been presented to the grand jury, a motion to suppress evidence that had been obtained by unconstitutional methods, and motions for discovery and inspection of the materials held by the prosecutor that he intended to use at trial. And some motions that we filed were peculiar to the circumstances of our case, such as a challenge to the entire array of grand jurors and petty jurors because the selection process was discriminatory, and the change of venue motion to move the trial to another county because of prejudicial pretrial publicity. All of our motions, no matter how ordinary, were opposed by the prosecutor, which meant that we had to prepare and attach to them a thoroughly researched and documented memorandum of law, primarily to ensure that on appeal the proper constitutional or statutory foundation for the motion would be on record. Because of the sensitivity of the case and my own paranoia, I researched and typed all of my motions, waited for them to be photocopied, served them on the prosecutor, and filed them with the clerk's office myself. But it was Ray's knowledge of New Jersey rules of criminal practice that carried Charlie and me through the maze of procedures that were unfamiliar to us. I had read the rules of evidence and trial procedure, but there was no substitute for the hands-on practical guidance Ray provided. In addition, his eloquent courtroom style and easy articulation of the most complex legal principles heightened the expertise of our defense team. His color, which had so startled Assata when she first saw him, believing him to be white, seemed to be an open rejection of the white privileged society which he could easily have entered had he so chosen. His thinning gray hair and slightly rumpled suits were in sharp contrast to Charlie's dapper appearance with his polished black hair and mustache, but in no way diminished his professionalism or his stature. The prosecutor had provided us with discovery materials of all kinds of evidence he planned to introduce during the trial. His materials were all precise, all from allegedly unimpeachable FBI laboratories in Washington, D.C., all irrefutable, all infallibly typed, and all condemning, leaving no room for a second opinion. I struggled to find a flaw in the carefully arranged smorgasbord that had been placed before me, and I couldn't. I spent months analyzing the materials, which included all of the ballistic and other evidence, such as dirt samples removed from the section of the turnpike at the scene of the shootout and from the area where the Pontiac had traveled afterward, from where Zaid lay dead and Assata was captured. There were blood samples removed from both troopers and from Zaid, Sundiata, and Assata, and the laboratory results that matched the samples with bloodstains found at the scene and on their clothing. There were glass samples from each of the 3 cars, including an analysis of whether glass had been shattered by a bullet fired from inside or outside the vehicles. More than 60 for bullets, bullet casings, and bullet fragments. And the weapons found at each of the 2 sites, consisting of a 9mm Browning automatic pistol, a .380 caliber Browning automatic pistol, a 9mm Bergmann super automatic Llama, a .38 Special Colt revolver, and a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver. I analyzed Harper's and Assata's hospital records and the autopsy reports conducted on Forster and Zaid, the neutron activation analysis performed on all of them to determine whether there was gunshot residue on their hands, as well as all the official trooper reports filed about the incident and the trooper's grand jury testimony. I visited the garage in West Trenton where the Pontiac had been stored, photographed it, and went with our ballistics expert to the police barracks, where each gun was fired and the results compared with the ballistic reports we had received. But a gnawing question continued to bother me. Did the troopers know that the Pontiac and its passengers would be on the turnpike that night? Were they watching for them? And did they shoot first? I had asked Assata whether she believed the Pontiac had been targeted, and she had dismissed even the possibility. But I was not convinced. If, as my gut told me, the troopers were waiting for them, in all likelihood the troopers fired the first shots, in which case the defense of self-defense could be considered. The prosecution held the full deck, and before I could play, they had to give up some of their hidden cards. I returned to Harper's grand jury testimony in which he gave his version of what had happened. He said that he had observed a white vehicle with Vermont license plates and a defective taillight traveling south on the turnpike. 2 black males and 1 black female were riding in the car. He pulled them over, asked the driver to get out of the car, and obtained the car registration from him as they stood behind the Pontiac. He went to the front door of the car to check the vehicle registration number and saw no irregularities. Suddenly, he said, the woman seated in the front passenger seat pulled a gun from her pocketbook and shot him. He then retreated to the back of his patrol car, and the woman leaped from the driver's side of the Pontiac and began shooting at him from a crouched position alongside it. He returned fire, hit her, and heard her scream. He then fired at the male passenger who had emerged from the passenger side of the back seat, shot him, heard him scream, ejected the shells from his revolver, and reloaded. In the meantime, he saw Forster grappling with the driver at the back of the Pontiac. While his grand jury testimony stuttered to a halt at this point, when he continued, he said that after he shot the male passenger, he retreated 200 yards up the hill to the administration building, reported the shootout, and gave a description of the car as he saw it continue south on the turnpike. As I compared Harper's sworn testimony before the grand jury, given on May 11th, with his official police report, filed on May 3rd, I saw contradictions, inconsistencies, and omissions between the two. The police report supplemented the grand jury testimony, providing information that Harper had followed the Pontiac for 2 miles, made 3 passes alongside it on both the driver and passenger sides, called in the identification of the passengers as 2 black men and 1 black female, and then pulled them over in the lighted area of Exit 9, where the administration building overlooked the highway. I questioned the 3 passes he had made on each side of the Pontiac in his unmarked patrol car. Was it to make certain that the passengers were the 3 people the police had been told to expect? Did he trail the car for 2 miles before making the stop to reduce risk? Is that why Commander Foster, who was manning the Turnpike Communications Command Post that night, directed 2 other troopers, Robert Palancher and Werner Forster, to provide backup for a minor violation, a broken taillight? The trooper manual specifies no such reinforcement for troopers making stops for minor violations on the turnpike. Did Harper's actions suggest that he expected trouble? Did he know that alleged members of the BLA would be traveling the turnpike that night, 2 black men and 1 black woman? And did he believe that the woman would be Joanne Chesimard? Did he panic when he pulled the Pontiac over? And if he did he fire the first shot? I knew that Trooper John Harper was the key. He was the only eyewitness the prosecutor had, and he was the only one who could establish what I needed to know. I felt that something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I decided to obtain a court order permitting me to listen to the entire night shift radio communications from 10 o'clock p.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. and record it. The transmissions had been received in the administration building on 4 reels called magnesium tapes, and I listened to the scratchy sounds over and over again, transcribing and comparing them. Of significance to me was Palancher's response when Harper radioed that he was making the stop. He said, "Meet you at the pass, partner," and raced north to the scene of the stop at 120 miles an hour. Did he expect a shootout? Why else would he have sped to back up a stop for a violation that, on the face of it, would have generated only a summons? Palancher never reached the administration building. Halfway there, he received a radio communication from the command center that Harper had been wounded by the occupants of the Pontiac, which was now proceeding south. He made a U-turn, spotted the Pontiac on the side of the road, emptied his gun at Sundiata's fleeing figure, and discovered Zaid lying dead in the grass near where Assata, barely alive, was captured. These were some of the pieces, but it was not until I discovered the Baginski tapes that they came together. The Baginski tapes were a series of audio cassettes that recorded the investigation conducted by Detective Sergeant First Class Richard H. Kelly on the morning of May 2nd. The investigation was triggered by the discovery of Forster's body alongside his patrol car, which was parked directly behind Harper's well over an hour after Harper had run from the scene and into the building to report the shootout. I call them the Baginski tapes because Sergeant Chester Baginski was the first one Kelly questioned, and because the package containing the fricassettes, retrieved from the basement of the administration building, was labeled Baginski tapes and did not refer to Kelly's investigation or even to the day of May 2nd. Baginski had been assigned to the trooper desk at the administration building that night. His job was to record everything that transpired inside the building in the station log, which the troopers called the Station Bible. Neither the tapes nor the log had been released to us with the other discovery material and would have remained a buried secret had I not heard a reference to Kelly's investigation on the late morning recording of the magnesium tapes. Both the Baginski tapes and the Station Bible revealed that when Harper fled to the building during the shootout in fear for his life, he never reported that Forster was at the scene, that Forster was engaged in battle with the occupants of the Pontiac, or that he had left Forster slain on the turnpike alongside his patrol car. Kelly's voice crackled with anger as he began his interrogation of Baginski. The following is a transcript of portions of the tapes that were admitted into evidence. Kelly, this is the voice of Detective Sergeant First Class Richard H. Kelly. Today's date is Tuesday, today's date is Wednesday, May the 2nd. The time is now 7:17 a.m. This recording is being made in the office of Detective Sergeant First Class Richard H. Kelly. Present in the room is Lieutenant King, Executive Officer of the New Jersey Police, Troop D, New Brunswick. Also present in the room is Sergeant Chester Baginski, New Jersey State Police, Troop D, Substation New Brunswick. Sergeant Baginski, the reason you've been asked here is to give us your interpretation of the facts as they relate to the shooting and murder of Troopers Harper and Forster earlier this date here on the turnpike. As best you can, to the best of your recollection, and in your own words, would you give us your account of, from the outset, as to what developed in this incident? Baginski, this is Sergeant Chester Baginski. I was assigned to on the station record at the New Brunswick station. At about 12:59 a.m., 1 a.m., Trooper Harper entered the station and stated that he was shot as a result of a shootout that he had at milepost 83. He further gave information that it was a Vermont registered vehicle, color white, and one tail light was out. He stated that the vehicle was occupied by 2 colored males and 1 colored female. The female would be wearing a red blouse and one of the colored males would be wearing a white jacket. This information was put on the air. At the time when Trooper Harper stopped at the station, he made no mention of his backup man when they ran into the trouble. We had no knowledge on the condition of the backup man. We knew it was 820 and Trooper Forster was assigned to this vehicle. We attempted to reach 820 and we got no response. Kelly, Sergeant, if you can recall, how long was it from the time that Trooper Harper first entered the substation to announce the fact that he had been shot and to describe his assailant and the vehicle? How long was it from that point to the point where you first became aware of the fact that the backup patrol, namely Trooper Forster, may have been in difficulty? Well, what I'm trying to get at is how long would it have been from the time that Harper came into your presence and announced the fact that he had been shot to the point? From that point, how long was it before serious efforts were made to locate Trooper Forster? Baginski, I really don't know the definite time lapse, but the first we were advised of it was when the the dispatcher went down to check a car in the parking lot and was advised that Trooper Forster may be lying out in the roadway at 83 southbound. Kelly, okay, at this point, how much time would have elapsed from the time that Harper came into the substation and announced he was shot and you were notified from some other individual at the substation that there was a trooper lying out on the roadway? Baginski, long pause, no response. Kelly, at this point, Sergeant Baginski requests permission to refer to the station record. Permission was granted. He's now over there to consult the station record. It would appear to this officer at this moment that he is confused in relation to time. And as a result, I have allowed him to refer to the station record. Baginski, my first knowledge of Trooper Forster being shot was at 2:05 a.m. Kelly, again, if you recall, approximately what time was it when Trooper Harper arrived at the station announcing he had been shot? Baginski, to the best of my recollection, it was around 12:58 to 1 a.m. Kelly, so apparently 1 hour elapsed from the time that Harper arrived at the station and announced that he had been shot and the time that you were first aware that Forster was in difficulty. Would that be correct? Baginski, it's about the right time. Kelly, did Trooper Harper make you aware of that fact that he had left, for reasons best explained by Trooper Harper, that he had left Trooper Forster at the scene? Or did he ever acknowledge that Trooper Forster arrived at the scene? Baginski, there was no mention made of Trooper Forster by Trooper Harper at the time of his arrival. Kelly, now as I understand it, to the best of your recollection, Trooper Harper never made mention of the fact to you or to Troopers Foster or O'Rourke, 2 other troopers at the station, when Harper arrived, the fact that he had left Forster at the scene with these other people, and these people were in fact armed and shooting. Baginski, he made no mention of Forster. The following is part of the transcript of Kelly's interrogation of Trooper Edward O'Rourke, who was in the administration building on the morning of May 2nd. O'Rourke, after he described Harper's arrival at the administration building. I was ordered by Lieutenant King to stay with Trooper Harper, go to the hospital with him, see to answering any questions he wasn't able to. Kelly, there's no mention of Trooper Forster at that conversation or any conversation whatsoever at the station. O'Rourke, as I recall, Harper just said that he had been shot and was coherent enough to give the description of the car, plate number which was given out to all interchanges and stations. Kelly, well, to the best of your recollection, have you in detail given us the facts as you recall them relating to this incident? Or is there anything else you can now recall you would like to add to this statement? O'Rourke, no, to the best of my knowledge. That's about how I remember it happening. I do remember standing in the hospital emergency room with Trooper Harper when a call came in for Garrett, who just arrived at the hospital, stating that Trooper Forster had been killed. Up until that time, I didn't even know Trooper Forster was really involved in the incident at all. Kelly, as best you can recall from the time you first encountered Trooper Harper until the time that you received information as to the fate of Trooper Forster, as best you can now recall, Trooper Harper never mentioned to you the fact that Trooper Forster was also at the scene of the shooting. O'Rourke, that's correct to the best of my recollection. Trooper Forster's name was not mentioned. As I listened to the tape, I remembered Harper's other contradictions or, at best, incomprehensible assertions. For example, he had written in his official reports that he had never seen Forster's state patrol car, although it was parked directly behind his unmarked patrol car, its overhead flashing lights revolving until it was removed the next morning. And although the state police had recovered all of the spent shells Harper had ejected from his gun directly behind it, and not behind Forster's car as he had reported. But all of these speculations and questions occurred before the trial when I was unaware of just what Harper's testimony would be. What one did know, however, was that both the Middlesex General Hospital and Roosevelt Hospital records had already established the trajectory of the bullet that had entered Assata's middle right armpit, severed the median nerve, and caused instant paralysis. And I knew that our neurological and thoracic experts had established that the track of the bullet had shattered her clavicle and entered her chest, which could have occurred only had she been shot while in a seated position with both arms raised. These facts totally refuted Harper's grand jury testimony and his sworn official reports in which he claimed that he saw Assata reach into a pocketbook while she was seated in the car, pull a gun from it, and shoot him. His official reports also stated that he believed himself to be in danger while he was questioning Assata because Forster had yelled to him from behind the Pontiac where he was questioning Sundiata and had held up an ammunition clip he had allegedly removed from Sundiata. But let me add this now. At the trial, he testified that he had lied both to the grand jury and in his official reports. That he had never seen a gun in Assata's hand while she was in the car. That he had never seen her fire a gun while she was in the car. That he had never seen her remove a gun from a red pocketbook. And in fact, that he had not even seen a red pocketbook in the Pontiac. He also testified that he had lied when he reported that Forster had shown him an ammunition clip. During Sundiata's trial and later in Assata's trial, he said he assumed that Assata had fired at him from the car because just before he heard a shot and after he had ordered her to put her hands in sight, she had made a gritting facial expression, bared her teeth, and emitted a growl. His remarks, I thought, seemed like some human being's perception of how animals, particularly black panthers, prepare themselves for attack. I made what I called a care package for Ray, Charlie, Sundiata, and Assata consisting of photocopied transcriptions of the Magnesink and Baginski tapes, the station Bible, and my analysis. For me, there was one unassailable fact. The evidence we now had gave us a great opportunity to discredit all of Harper's testimony on cross-examination, whether he had acted from panic or cowardice, and whether or not he had fired the first shot. We remained cautious, but we considered the Baginski tapes to be the most significant and helpful piece of material yet. For the first time, we experienced a modicum of hope.
Jesse and Obama, hope. Spring's eternal, that's what they say. Katherine Massey Book Club. We will pick up there next Friday. Chapter 10, moseying along through this here text. Next week we'll be halfway done. Number to dial, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61. If you would like to participate, the email untiljustice@gmail.com. All the folks who missed out first time around, right to the phone lines. No one got to share the phone line, so if you dialed in, think you have observations, comments, questions to add, star 61, hand up. Do not wait until the last minute. All the folks who dialed in via the phone line should be open. Proceed.
Greetings, everyone. Can I be heard?
Retired firefighter in Florida.
Yes, sir. Okay. I'm still in the process of catching up. Was out of town when the first and second readings took place. So I'm steady catching up. Always like to hear about Miss Shakur and her counter-racist efforts. I've heard you mention about the white lady, Viola Luiso, and I think that that incident with her death took place in 65. Also in the first reading was some information on the Kerner Commission. I have did a little studying on that in the past, and I have here similar to what I think I heard you state, that white supremacy has a great understanding of the reaction of non-white people, racially classified as black, to mistreatment, and we will fight back, in a lot of cases. Matter of fact, Dr. King was famous for predicting the violent reaction. That is, he said, you know how eloquent he was in speaking. He mentioned something about the violence would be inevitable, and of course it was. And the white people who sat around in the room, in I guess the White House or wherever they was at, they understood that. They understood the reaction to that. My third note here is Miss Shakur's torture. It was standard and quite similar to what took place earlier with Huey Newton after his capture. He was tortured and wounded at the same time. I think I heard something about the attorney, her aunt, had to strip butt naked to be able to see her client. Wow, that would never happen to a white attorney. That, as far as my thoughts, I don't think that would ever happen with a white attorney. And I was wondering on what law enforcement officer basically took out that particular order to watch her as she stripped butt naked. That is insane. Anyway, I was just thinking that in today's time, a large percentage of black youth today is occupied with a lot of social technology, a lot of negative social technology, and involved with a lot of foolishness, and that probably would factor in on why you don't see such efforts today. It's probably as much as it happened years ago because of the technology and how it's not used correctly in a lot of cases. Last but not least, you was mentioned in the second reading. You was mentioning about I guess some of the things that took place with the incident, and I had this thought that law enforcement, as a tool, they use probable cause techniques to, and I'm gonna use it loosely, legally start a violent interaction with the suspect. They would use, okay, I stop you because your light on your license plate was not on, something that really you can overlook, person could overlook and whatnot, that sort of thing. I smelled smoke, marijuana smoke, that sort of thing. They do that on purpose to stop the people who are driving in an automobile, and especially if they're non-white, black, and the excitement goes from there. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Stop and maybe we can go on a chase. All of that. I smelled reefer in the car. Oh, yeah. That's the Opalaka 3. We heard about them. Oh, yeah. Bad dudes. Oh, yeah. Might have to shake them down. They keep razors in their pockets. Got to check them. Oh, yeah. They love that sort of thing. That's why Fuller and company, many folks have said you should expect this sort of conduct. That's why it's no running, acting wild, because we love it. He said, oh, he was going to run. He was going to take up. Standard operating procedure for sure. I could not imagine a white attorney having to strip naked to enter, although it did remind me. Did we hear what Johnny Cochran, his attorneys had to endure in their case? That's 20 years later, so maybe things improved, but I would be curious as to how Johnny Cochran was treated during all of that. But yeah, she did tell us that. I think that was last week that she had to be strip searched to go and see her client. Raw. System of White Supremacy. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share, proceed. Let's see, our caller, last four digits, 7765. Are you just listening? Did you have commentary to share? Maybe they're just listening in. Right on. If you have commentary to share, *61. Make sure I nab the rest of the folks who wrote in. I can finish the first email I was reading. Finishing that one up, I left off with Dr. Roscoe Brown, sellout. 12. My primary responsibility was the clinical course conducted in juvenile delinquency. Most of the students in this class were classified as white, I presume. I don't know. I suspect that would be true. She didn't tell us, I don't think, exact numbers, but that sounds probably true. 13. Throughout the years, I wrestled with my own feelings about the BLA. 20 policemen who had lost their lives allegedly from the guns of the Black Liberation Army. Are we going to get a few more details about the BLA? I suspect we got, a good half of the book to go, so I would think more details will come in about the organization and Assata's involvement, all that good stuff. Chapter 8. 1. Blackstreet Joan, the Black Joan of Arc, High Priestess, the cop-hating Black Liberation Army, strange young woman, most wanted woman in the New York City history. The New York tabloid newspapers are known for their tacky headlines and names. See New York Post, headless body in topless bar. What? Crazy. That's from 1983. 2. Light brown-skinned female, Sheriff Mildred Scott. Miss Scott has had a long career in the Sheriff's Department in New Jersey. In 1991, she became Chief Sheriff Officer, the highest law enforcement position of any female up until that time. In 2011, she became the Sheriff of Middlesex County, New Jersey, which apparently is the top position. I wonder how much racism she has experienced in all of those decades. She should write a memoir. 3. Shouting of Nazi slogans by German descendants who made a large part of the state trooper force. White culture. See, I Love Hitler leaked messages, exposed young Republicans, racist chat. Oh, yeah, same thing. Yeah. 4. Raymond Brown, New Jersey lawyer. Judson Hamlin, New Jersey prosecutor. Judge Leon Jarofsky. Dr. Alan Clark, former health director, city of Newark, New Jersey. Mr. Brown died in 2009 at the age 94. His additional clients included Reuben Hurricane Carter, Dr. X, a surgeon accused of murdering his patients, H. Rap Brown, Alameen, I know he changed his name, Alameen, I have to double check, and Amiri Baraka, formerly Leroy Jones, prosecutor and suspected racist Judson Hamlin went on to become a judge. Dr. Alan Clark, I think he is still alive. Phone number 973-674-3500. His current practice is in addiction medicine. How about that? That's needed for sure. 5. Political prisoner, illegally incarcerated because of her opinions, or who have been convicted of a crime, brutalized while in prison because of his or her opinions, who has been convicted of committing a crime for political reasons. All African American prisoners are political prisoners. I applaud her giving a definition. I'll have to think about it. Thinking is encouraged. 6. Policeman Thomas Shea, charged with murder of 10-year-old Clifford Glover. The race soldier's description of the incident does not seem credible to me. Shea was acquitted by a jury, which led to riots in South Jamaica, Queens, New York. The jury clears Shea in killing of boy, June 13, 1974. Clifford Glover killing 50 years later. They renamed a street in honor of Mr. Glover in 2023. Guess after they did some thinking during the COVID days. 7. Orientation of political prisoners in international global rather than personal usually will not conform to rules of the court representing Joey. Required constant adjustment from my long practiced academic and technical approach. Assata's stance seems rather courageous. Yes, I would say that. Both of Miss Williams and Assata Shakur, although they had different views, responses to racism, both heroic, admirable in their own way. United Independent. 8. Assata's statement aired over every black radio station, published in the journal Black Scholar. I am a black revolutionary, and by definition that makes me a part of the Black Liberation Army. BLA was not an official organization, was not centrally located, and consisted of multiple groups with different timelines. It is difficult to know when and where the BLA emerged out of the pre-existing underground. From what Assata said, it seems you could become part of the BLA just by saying you are or claiming to be a revolutionary. That sounds probably true, which that would just be now. One, that's similar to what we have now. Black Lives Matter, Antifa. I think there are a lot of kind of decentralized organizations like that where you don't really have a leader, or it's very easy to just say, well, I'm part of Black Lives Matter. I'm Antifa, very easy. It's not like it's a screening process. You got to pay membership dues or anything like that. Also, that means, hey, this could be a race soldier. This could be a victim that has been recruited, and it's under duties from racists to go and say, oh yes, I'm BLA, and then do whatever. If that's commit crimes so we can blame it on black people, if that's go join black groups and snoop on them and then report back to us, that could be a variety of things. But I mean, positives, negatives to that approach, I reckon. 9. Let's see. Solitary confinement, filing motions, obtain rudimentary rights, art supplies, books, Assata grandparents' visits, food, mother's marble cake, barefoot socks, sneakers, security risk, no physical therapist, refused transport to Middlesex Hospital. With all these machinations, she still escaped. People have criticized enforcement officers for the duration of the book club and saying these folks are kind of shoddy. 2. Evidence from all allegedly unimpeachable FBI laboratories, ballistic evidence, blood samples, glass samples, bullets, autopsy report, CSI is a lie. America's forensic investigation system is overdue for sweeping reforms. The Atlantic. This is from 2015. This was just after they were coming out with all that fake hair evidence and all this, and everything was, oh, he's guilty. Oh, Leroy did it. Assata did it. Lakeisha did it. Oh, yeah, they're guilty. We got the hair right here. See that fingerprint? Oh, yeah, we magnified that times 1 billion. You can see all the little Negro detail, and then they come to find out, nah, we was lying. We done made up all that. Nah, we didn't see no Negro DNA there. We just lied about that and the hair. And, yeah, we just faked it all. Big news was coming out around 2015. 3, Harper at his trial, he testified he had both lied to the grand jury and his official report. Shouldn't the judge prevent the use of any subsequent testimony by this liar? Question. Maybe I don't understand. In other words, I was lying then, but I'm telling the truth now. I think we've heard this before. Like, hey, you got. I was lying on Monday, but hey, it's Friday now. Hey, new day. I've learned my lesson. They say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I learned a few. This old dog, he learned a few things. So I'm being truthful now. What? Maybe you didn't even tell us all of your lies from the first time around. And is this perjury? Is that a crime? You go and lie on an official document where we got cop killers and all that militant niggers, and you've been lying about all this? Isn't that criminal? Mark Furmanish? We don't get this militant first, and then we'll. What do it mean to be white? To be continued. Let's see. Before I get to some of my notes, let's see, our caller at 7765. Did she make it in? Commentary to share. Just listening. Probably just listening. Hopefully we'll nab you next time around. Hopefully you didn't have your mute button on thinking you've been talking away and then we missed all of it. Anywho, let's see. The notes that I took. When she begins, Assata, when she begins to go into her details in terms of why she joined the Black Liberation Army, and she goes kind of down the evidence, the record of what race soldiers have done, the low life expectancy and all that. She talks about the lead poisoning, immediately reminded me of Freddie Gray, and lack of medical care. She was writing this before the Tuskegee syphilis experiment had been publicized. Now, it had been going on for decades at this point, more than 25 years, well over 25 years, but it wasn't public knowledge. So she's, talking about, hey, we got this faulty medical, and you don't even know the half. Jonestown ain't even quite half. Well, actually, pause. Jim Jones is happening. We just haven't had the murder, but oh yeah, Jonestown's have been rolling because this is by the mid-70s. They've been rolling for a good 15 years or more at this point. Out in California and everything. Probably watching this trial. Let's see. She said, importantly, I thought the turnpike in Jersey is a checkpoint where black people are stopped, searched, harassed, and assaulted. Whoa. Is that still the case? Is that still a popular, you trafficking, ghost guns, fentanyl, fake IDs, something, we got to pull you over and check your pockets. What you doing, Leroy? Let me pat you down. What you got there? What you got? You ain't got no seatbelt on? Let me pat you down. You trafficking them dark people from Mexico? Let me see. What you got? Is that still the case? Whew. We see victim in New Jersey. Some of the folks see what is the turnpike? Is that still? They get a whole lot of niggers on the turnpike. Let's see. She gave her roll call in the spirit of Mark Clark, Fred Hampton, Killed Together, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson in California. George Jackson wrote Blood in My Eye, among many other books. He's been mentioned many times on the program. I paused because, whoa, she said Mark Essex. Whoa. We talked about Mark Essex a lot. They even got whole songs made to Mark Essex, just like Susan Smith. New Orleans, Black Panther Party. Unfortunately, I do have to say that Mark Essex, veteran, he came back to Louisiana, said, I'm upset with New Orleans Police Department, as are many folks. I got to kill black and white officers. Not cool. But he killed both, and then Fuller said they did like a King Kong on him, got a helicopter and went, and I think they unloaded about 500 rounds on him on top of the roof, and that was that. Mark Essex. And I think that's another one. Police said, what? We got these uppity niggers. You gonna call yourself getting back at it? Oh, We already done shot 500 rounds at old Mark Essex. Don't you think we ain't got nigger knockers and another 5 million rounds for the rest of you niggers in the Ninth Ward, Lil Wayne's cousins, and the rest of y'all? We will bust your head good. You won't be chewing no gumbo for a month. I think they got books about that happening too, because police do not believe in turning the other cheek. Or they mean it in a different regard, talking about Amadou Diallo turning to get the plunger. They mean a whole different frame of world when they talk about turn the other cheek. They don't mean no nonviolence, forgive, bygones. No. They believe in the payback, like Brother James Brown. Said the private conferences, attorney-client privilege, schmivillage. We don't believe in all that. We're going to use, and probably even once they close the door, we got all the microphones and stuff up now. So chat away, niggas. We can hear it all. That was Johnny Cochran. He said that with Black Panther Party, Geronimo Pratt. He said, man, I think they done infiltrated our defense team. They snooping and got electronic surveillance and all the rest of it. What's going on? Same time period. And then we get the correspondence where you got all these lies, and he didn't tell you nothing about when Officer Forrester. That's the big one. That's, hey, Assata did all this. You got all this conflicting testimony. Well, I saw it with a gun. I'm just lying. I didn't see it with no gun. Well, I saw him with the clip. I'm just lying. I didn't see them. Like, man, that sort of thing right there from the very beginning. Throw all this out. You lied. Get out of here. And it would be what they call, unless I've been misinformed, in the language of jurisprudence, it would be dismissed with prejudice because you lied. Don't even come to the court wasting our time with no charges about none of this. We got these old snarling, she had spittle flying from her mouth. Her teeth was out. Looks like she had blood on her fangs. She was going to kill us and shoot us all. Said she was going to drink our blood. What are you talking about? Well, you got these bloodthirsty militant niggers, and, she looked like she was ready to spring, and, I just lied. It sounded good in the report, though. I made it. Boy, I bet. Come on. Incidentally, Black Scholar, the journal, I guess twofold. One, we had one of the folks who helped put that journal together, Black Scholar, the publication where they said they published Assata's, what should we say, her message to the people, her supporters about what happened. Robert Allen, black male, privileged. He was a guest on the program in 2010 and talked about his work with Black Scholar, and we talked about the Port Chicago Mutiny. Privileged black males, but that's World War II, ancient history. That's California history too, even though it is Port Chicago, that is in California. But he was on, we talked about all of that. Two, the actual journal Black Scholar, which goes back about 50, 60 years, is available online. You can go online and get the exact article that they are talking about and see exactly the whole thing that was published in terms of what Assata Shakur, what did she say. It's free. You can download the specific report, or you can get that entire article. But 1973, you can just go back online and just pick out. It would just be a matter of finding exactly when they published this report. I will probably download it and place it online so folks can check it out. But they had a lot of articles all about racism, white supremacy, all around the world. Oh, even I just said Jonestown. They got the politics of Guyana. That's about a year before Jim Jones and company got there, if they had not been there already. But by 73, they'd have been close to being there or already there. Either way. And they even got reviews of Frantz Fanon. So I said it's global system of racism, white supremacy. But I would check. My suspicion is that this article is in the Black Scholar 1973, probably somewhere around the summertime, because the arrest and all happened in May, so probably check between like June and September issues, and it's probably somewhere in there. Anyway, unless we missed any folks, we missed anybody quickly before we get ready to wrap up? Right on. We'll check them next week. If we missed any folks, didn't get to share, we will be back. We are not close to the end, so you'll have many opportunities to share. They even have articles from this exact time period, 1973, from Shirley Chisholm in Black Scholar, and the white press racist and sexist. That's what Shirley Chisholm wrote at that time period. You can download that whole article for free if you are interested. So I said lots of interesting things if you are interested in studying seriously System of White Supremacy, even some things that might be interesting enough to turn the television off from time to time. Oh, look at me doing two things at once. Gus T. Renegade. Cannot believe it. All right. So located the article. It is exactly in the Black Scholar, Volume 5, Number 2. Ew. Writing exact what time again? October 1973. October 1973. So what is that, 52 years? We are exactly 52 years from when all this is going down. And so, yeah, you can go and get the whole article of what she had to say. I don't think we got every single word in the book, but it's all right there, reprinted October 1973, and it's about 3 pages, I think. Yeah, it's about 3 pages in total. I will download and share if you want to go and check it out, and then I'll see if they have any other reports in Black Scholar about the Assata Shakur case during this time period. But hey, this is why reading more important than watching television. We'll be here tomorrow, compensatory call-in, catch up on what's gone down past 7 days or so, see what's been happening on the plantation. Hopefully folks staying safe and warm as we move into colder weather. Sobriety would be best. They have all these tacky like it would have been way worse. They got stopped that night on the turnpike in Jersey. If everybody puffing reefer, got our Mad Dog with us, like, oh man. Black Scholar might not have published what Assata Shakur had to say. Said, you drunk on the Mad Dog and then got in the shootout? Man, get on out of here. We ain't got time for all that. We're trying to be serious. Sobriety would be best. Creator, we ask that you remind us, even for Viola Louisa, 1965, thank you, retired firefighter, Alabama, not Mississippi, strive for accuracy, but even with Viola Louisa, James Reeb, the 2 white boys killed in Mississippi with James Chaney, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. Even Leroy. Remind us, stop producing throwaway offspring to be raped by Mary Kay Letourneau, drowned by Susan Smith, or lesbian adoptive white women, or thrown out of law school. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.